Hello, everyone. Welcome to Trades Talk Tuesday. I am your host, Pop Culture Mechanic, but you can call me Pop for short. And today, I have a special guest. You may have seen him on YouTube playing some Paper Mario. I am referring to the Angry Canadian. Let's give him a big hand.
Hey,
Welcome,
what's going
Angry
on?
Canadian. Hey, nice of you to join me.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, let's just get right into it then. This show is all about the skilled trades, and you have been in the skilled trades. You are a tradesman, and you want to explain some history of that as to how did you get into the skilled trades?
Yes, sir. So when I was about 17 years old, I was in college. I graduated early from high school and went straight to college. I wanted to get into IT. And at the time, at the college, I met a lot of U.S. military veterans. And I just talked to them about the U.S. military and was curious about like how it was and what they did. And because of them, like I never had a real desire to join the U.S. military, but they would told me all this like benefits and perks to it. So I decided, well, I guess I'll enlist because it'd be a great way to like leave home and like kind of get off my feet and get into a new job. The mistake I made was I didn't try to push for the job I wanted in the U.S. Air Force. So I kind of just let the recruiter choose for me in a way. And so with that, I didn't get into IT and I instead got into aerospace maintenance. And whether or not that's was a good thing or a bad thing, it actually was really interesting and it taught me a lot of like skills. So I'm pretty grateful for getting into that. But ultimately, that job brought me to Japan. So I can't really be too harsh on my circumstance, my previous circumstance. So I'm really thankful for that.
So, in a roundabout way, you not picking or going into IT is what got you into Japan. And I must say, I am jealous because I would love to visit Japan, and you've made it there.
Yeah, dude, just it all you gotta do is join the military and you'll be sent wherever they want to send you.
So, when he was picking out your aviation mechanic, is that what it was called?
In the military world, they call it aerospace maintenance. I think
Aerospace
it has
maintenance.
yeah, I think it has a slightly different term in the like the
Okay.
FAA civilian world. Yeah.
Okay. So, aerospace mechanics, was that because there weren't a lot of them? Do you think that they put you into that?
So now that I'm remembering it, basically when you go in, they tell you to like choose your top 10 jobs. And before you do that, actually, they make you do like an aptitude test, and they check your skills, like when it comes to, or excuse me, your knowledge, like your basic high school knowledge. So your reading, your arithmetic, like some electrical knowledge, some mechanical knowledge, and you get a score based off these different categories. And I scored pretty high in mechanical and like I think mathematics, but then like somehow I scored kind of low in electrical. So if every job in the military is determined on what your score is for that like category. So I couldn't even qualify for any of the IT jobs, which is kind of weird. So
Oh,
I was
man.
kind of stuck with mechanical jobs. So from the list of mechanical jobs, I chose like 5 to 10 different mechanical jobs, and aerospace maintenance was on that list. I think it was like number 2 or 3, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So not your first sort of so your first or second choice maybe?
Yes, I think my first choice was it was called cable and data systems or antenna systems, which is basically the guys that climb poles and they do like cable maintenance on them, like for radios and like satellite dishes or whatever. I think that's what my first choice was because I thought it was like something to do with IT and computers, so that's why I put that as my first choice.
Ah, okay. I see. Well, that's quite that's quite the story as to how you got into it, and just from talking to those guys that were in the military already, um, Did they like sugarcoat it, or did they let you know what you were in for when you were going to go?
If I remember correctly, they told me a lot of like great stuff. Like, yeah, you'll be able to travel the world. You'll have your education paid for. You'll make like a decent salary because a lot of stuff is paid for. I don't remember, and this probably wasn't their fault, but I just don't remember if they like told me like, yeah, there'll be some tough times or like the work environment's not going to be fun because everyone is trying to get promoted and like make themselves look better than you. I don't remember if they've ever shared that, but they probably did, and I just wasn't listening because I was, a 17-year-old kid, so I didn't really want to. I didn't really care to listen to that. My heads were in the clouds, looking at, for adventures. So
Yeah, and you want to leave the house and get out there, eh, and see that world.
yes,
Okay. What year was this, by the way? I'm just a little curious.
this would have been 2013, 2014.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
Yeah,
And
around that time frame.
and how long were you in for?
We'll go with 8 years. I was in for 8 years.
Wow, that's quite the long haul there.
Yes.
But you did get all your training through them, is that right?
Yes. So when it comes to the training, obviously when you join the military, they have you go through boot camp, the infamous boot camp that everyone talks about,
Ah,
and that's
yes.
like 8 weeks for the U.S. Air Force. I think it's changed now, but it was like 8 weeks for me. And then after that, while you're in boot camp, they tell you like, "Hey, this is the job you got." So from there, I got told that, "Hey, you're going to this other base in Texas to do your aircraft maintenance or aerospace maintenance training." So from there, I went to that new base and I did, if I remember correctly, it was called like Fundamentals of Aerospace Maintenance. And it was about like a month and a half long, maybe even less. And it was classroom training. So I sat in a classroom with a bunch of other new people, all the same rake, all the same haircuts. And they said, they taught us through the books, like, this is the basic concepts of the airplane, like the different systems in it, how it flies, and they also taught us like the structure of the work environment too. Like, this is who you are, and this is what you'll become after like X amount of time. These are your bosses. Like, this is their responsibilities. Of course, they taught you your own responsibilities, and yeah. So that was like about a month and a half, and then once you go through the fundamentals course, that's when you get shredded out, which is the term they use, shredded out to your specific airframe. And when you get chosen your specific airframe, then you go to a specific base in the U.S. to learn that airframe's like specific systems and the maintenance for it. So, for me, I got chosen to go to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, and I got shredded out to work on C5Ms, which is like the largest airplane for the North American countries. The only plane that's technically bigger than that is like the Russian whatever. It's like the same looking plane, but they made it like slightly taller by the tail.
Okay.
But it's literally like the second largest plane in the world. When it comes to like military planes, I believe. So yeah, and
Ooh, you worked
I have
on.
some photos later to show you. But yeah, it is called the Super Galaxy. Like, that's like the term for it. But yes, so Dover is where it's like one of the main bases for the C5 planes. And so I had to go there for my first base and then also to do my specific training for that airplane.
Okay. Yeah, okay, sounds like some big stuff you're involved with. That's that's that takes a lot out of you, especially when you're working with big equipment, because the stuff to work on it is usually big as well, So did
Yes.
you had probably some big tools to work with, and everything was probably like hydraulics and pneumatics when you were working on that's aircraft.
Yeah, a lot of the tools they use, it's a lot of basic tools that you see in any work environment, whether it be like your lumber environment or your industrial environment. But then there was a lot of new tools that I've never used before. And actually, I was pretty thankful that growing up, my dad always like forced me to help him with projects, and so I learned how to use tools way before I was in the military, so that kinda gave me an advantage because I noticed that a lot of the, like, greenhorns that would come in after me, like, just didn't have a background at all in using any tools, so they kinda struggled on, like, how to use a tool correctly. Um, but yeah, we use a lot of tools and, that's actually the first time I ever touched a torque wrench because I didn't know those things existed. Torque wrenches, so
Oh
I've used
yeah.
torque wrenches, different sizes. The biggest ones being like 1,000 foot-pounds. I
Ooh.
never had to like torque anything down that large, but the wrench itself was designed for doing tire changes because the tire changes required like 250 to 300 foot-pound torque when you're screwing stuff on. So um, and then we used we'll get into it when I show you the photos, but there's some specific. So I use
Right.
specific tools in my first job, and then specific tools in my second job. There was kind of
Okay.
a little bit of a difference.
All right. Um, Before we move along, let's just say hello to some of our people in the chat there. People like Jake D. How you doing, buddy? And old Whoopa Troopa. We all know Whoopa, don't we? He's a regular. And there's Alex Moore. And hey, it's the Underground. Nice to see you here. And that's looks like it for now. Anyone else that's lurking, I appreciate you being here. Hopefully, you enjoy what we're talking about, which is the skilled trades, and with Angry Canadian explaining what he was doing as a aerospace mechanic. When you went through your training, I'm assuming it was at the base there. Did you go by? Did they tell you like after so many years you'd be like the equivalent of a journeyman? Like after you went through some of your aerospace schooling and such?
Oh, that's a perfect question. So, in the military, they they have like this leveling system, and the leveling system has like a title attached to it. So, there's technically 5 levels, but people only ever use like 4 levels. So your bottom level, which is what I started out at, was a 3 level. That's just the term they use, and the name of that was apprentice. And then the next level, which was 5 level, because they did every 2 levels. 5 level, which was your journeyman, and
Okay.
then 7 level is your craftsman, and then 9 level. I don't remember the actual term for it, but they were like the shop bosses, or like they were like the higher ranking people. Um, I don't remember the actual term for it, but the three most important are the apprentice, journeyman, and craftsman, which are terms that you're familiar with, and you know
Yep.
the rest of the world uses. So,
Okay. So did it take you 4 years to become a journeyman?
oh my bad. So, the way they do it is this, and I have some notes here. So, after you get to your first base and you start your training on your specific airplane, you're still a first level, and in order to become a 3 level, which is the sorry, I'm going to use it, the terms that apprentice. In order to become an apprentice, you have to do some basic like couple months of training,
Hmm.
and then actually, I'm so sorry, I messed it up. Once you finish your technical school, you become an apprentice. If you want to become a journeyman, you need to do at least a year and a half, roughly a year and a half of on-the-job training to include. You get these booklets, and they teach you about like the journeyman level, like more advanced stuff about the airplane. And once you study those and you take an actual official test for them and you pass the test, then you become a journeyman after that. And then
Okay.
that same process is repeated for craftsmen, except craftsman, you have to be a specific rank in the military. It's the bottom tier of the non-commissioned officer rank. You have to be that first level of the non-commissioned officer. You have to get promoted, and then you can start studying the books for your craftsman level. And then once you study and you pass the test, then you get awarded the craftsman title for your job. So you become a journeyman within like less than 2 years at the job site.
Okay. Um, in civilian we have to have so many hours per year, and then eventually it adds up to 8,000 hours over our 8 year or 4 years of schooling. Did you have anything like that? Did you have to count hours or make sure that you got that much experience?
No, it wasn't hours. It was just I just remember being like after a year, my supervisor approached me and said, "Hey, you need to start studying the books here, and then once you pass this test with all these books, then you'll be given the journeyman status." So I guess somehow the military like could calculate the hours you worked, and they just knew that you would like what you're talking about, the 8,000 hours or whatever. They
Yeah.
they already kind of figured it out into like a 1 year timeline or 1 year plus timeline.
Okay. So it's slightly different, but I'm sure they would ensure that you are competent at the level you're at. I'm sure they had checks and balances to make sure like nobody tried to weasel through and wasn't as that good at their job.
Yeah, so when I remember this is actually kind of funny. So there was three books that I got, and they divided them based off of like categories of the airplane. So I think like the first book had to do with general knowledge and like airframe stuff, and then the second book was like electrical and hydraulic, and then the third book was like engines. And every time you finished one book, there was like a pre-test you took, like a knowledge check. And in order for you to get the next book, you had to pass the pre-check, the knowledge test. And there was a lot of people that like were having a hard time like being able to pass those knowledge checks and whatnot. So the supervisor, a good supervisor, wouldn't let them get the next book until they could see they were fully competent in that first book. And
Ah,
so by the time they get to the third book and they've already studied all of these books and they're ready to take the final test, because if you fail the test, so if you fail the test twice, you have to get commanders like approval to retake it a third time. Like it's a big deal if you fail it twice. Like I think you have to be really dumb to fail the test, because then you get like kicked out pretty much. Although not
oh,
kicked out, they'll like retrain you into a different career field. So they're very adamant about making sure people can pass those tests, and they don't want people just failing them left and right.
no, of course not, because they're dealing. First of all, you're dealing with aircraft, and that thing has to be gone over with a fine tooth comb and make sure that it's airworthy. Otherwise, people are going to be you're going to be killing people essentially if you don't make sure that everything is done correctly for that aircraft.
Yes, that is true. Multi-million dollar pieces of equipment.
Yeah. So then, after you got posted to your base there, what led you over to Japan? Did they decide to post you at a different base, or well, how did that go?
So the way that they do it in the U.S. Air Force is, sorry, with my specific job is, so I kind of got the, uh, how do you say this? Like, not the best airframe to work on, because the C5 is only, and this is public knowledge, they only are stationed at two bases in the United States, and Dover's one of them, or Delaware's one of them, and California is the other one. And if you want to go to any other base, you have to be coded, shredded to that airframe. But you can go overseas, and if you go overseas, your job changes slightly, and you become I don't even know how to explain this in simple terms. Overseas bases become like airports, I guess you can say. So
Okay.
when like American military planes come through, you're pretty much the ground guys that you see at the airport when you fly, but you actually get to do the maintenance on those planes instead of just like gas and go. Like you actually have to do the maintenance on those planes. So what happened was, I think it was about 2 years in, 2 or 3 years in, there's this thing called a dream sheet, which is like the top 10 bases you want to go to around the world. Now, you can't just choose any base. You have to choose bases that your job is at specifically. And for me, it has to be my airframe, which is the C5. So, like, out of those bases, Japan is one of them. There's a base in Germany. There's a base in Spain. There's Hawaii. Like, and these are all like those airport type of jobs I was telling you about. And actually, sorry, in the Air Force world, they call the term en route because I don't know what that's supposed to mean per se, but they just call it en route. So, anyway, so when I went on a business trip, and I came back from this business trip and I checked my email and they're like, "Hey, you got selected to go to Japan and work at this base and do this specific job." So that's how I moved from Delaware to Japan and changed, pretty much kind of changed jobs. And we'll see here soon like how the first job I have is completely different than the second job I had.
Yeah, okay. Did you want to go through the photos now? So that would be a good time to bring those up.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So you can just explain to everybody what we're looking at and anything else that pops into your head.
All right, so this first slide is my first job, which was called the isochronal inspection dock. And this is a specific job for this specific plane. Basically, when it comes to airplanes, I think it's all airplanes. It doesn't matter if it's military or not. They always have to undergo like very detailed inspections every calendar time frame. For example, every like couple years they have to go through a hangar and they have to get like pretty much tore down and then inspected on the inside and then rebuilt back up to make sure that like the inside stuff is working fine, the systems are working fine, and of course it allows the people to like fix the outside to like paint it up again or like fix any like dents and all this other stuff. So this dock is like the only dock for this plane which is in Delaware. And so this is a huge building that fits this plane inside of. I don't know. I mean, you can see by the top middle picture, like that's like the entirety, like the whole wingspan of the plane.
Whew.
And I actually forgot to I forgot to write down the like how many feet it is, like wide. But the top of the tail is it's like 65 feet or 70 feet. I have it on a slide later on. So this is a huge building. It's like it's really big. It takes a while to walk from like one side to the other. And as you can see here, there's a bunch of stands surrounding the maintenance stands surrounding the plane. So what happens is we tow the plane in, and then we all the stands are kind of retracted so the plane can go in without any damage. And then we spend like half a day, like moving the stands into place. And then once the stands are in place, like you can walk all around the plane on the outside and like do whatever maintenance you need to do. So so this is the first job I had. And yeah, as you can see through the pictures, um, like the different stands. There's actually how many shops are in here? There is like about 10 different shops that work in this hangar. So you have my old shop, which we were the isochronal inspection like maintenance. That's what our title was. So we were like the grunts, like the we inspected the plane and we would fix like only our career field stuff, which is just like super basic stuff, um, like changing tires or taking panels off and like fixing like stuff behind the panels. And then you had another shop which was electrical, and they obviously fixed the electrical systems. So they had a little like office in this hangar. You also had hydro or hydraulics, and they fixed the hydro, and they had their office. Uh, Jets, which was also that's like a term we use, but the engines like power plant. They obviously only touch the engines, but they also touch this smaller engine called the auxiliary power unit, which is on the back side of the plane, pretty much where like the butt of the plane is. And that's like a mini engine that allows you to turn over the main engine when it's time to like start turning over the main engines. And that gets into some more detail that I don't need to say. But and then there was also there was a shop that handled the avionics. There was a shop that handled the communications, like the communication equipment, and then
Hmm.
there was a shop that handled the big rigging of the plane. So anything that moved on the plane that was huge, they specifically were in charge of making sure that it was rigged correctly. So that's like your flight controls, that's your landing gears, um, that is the ramps on the plane because this plane can has ramps so you can load cargo on it. So those guys took care of that. And then, of course, we had another shop which was called the Custodian Tool Crib, and that's the shop where we go to collect our tools to do the job that we needed to do. And unfortunately, I don't have a photo of that. But the system that they do is it's kind of like a library system. Like you have like a number, like an ID number, and you go there and you use that number to check out tools. And then when you're done with the job, you got to return the tools, and they have to be in like the same condition, and nothing can be missing because everything has to be accounted for.
Aha.
So yeah, there's a lot. Oh, and then the last shop, my bad. The one more shop was two more shops. Sheet metal, sheet metal, because this is an inspection process, so sheet metal has to do a ton of work. I think like out of all the shops, sheet metal had the most work they did because they're all external and a lot of internal inside the plane. So they have to like bang out the dents. They had to like repaint the plane. Like they did a lot of work. And then the final shop was the parts supply shop. And so anytime we needed like new parts or like we would order like giant chunks of the plane, like new flight controls, we would have to go through them. So yeah, it was about 10 plus shops roughly that all worked in this hangar, several hundreds of people, and it was a huge operation.
Everybody had their specialty, it looks like. And from what I can see of these pictures, it is spotless in there. Like I'm impressed. Like you can, it's a shine on that floor.
So about that, one of the you would know this. One of the things you have to do as a bottom feeder is you have to mop the floors. So at the end of the day, before we can go home and before we did our turnover, we always had to like mop the entire hangar. And well, actually, I should say we would mop under the plane, and then on the Fridays we would mop the entire hangar. And yeah, so I like earned my keep per se, like mopping floors for like almost 2 years until I finally became a journeyman. And I didn't do it as much because we had all these apprentices that can do it. So
It's a
yes,
rite of passage for sure.
yeah, the right passage. That's what I was thinking of.
No, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, having so many guys specialized in each little shop there. I mean, you didn't mess around with the engine or anything because that wasn't your specialty. You weren't in that department. So yeah, it's pretty awesome to have that many guys working on one single thing at the same time. But did you guys find you were tripping over each other sometimes?
Um, so we had a guy who was in charge of the entire operation. He was a civilian that no one liked because he was kind of an a-hole about getting things done on time. And his job was to kind of manage the 10 shops, and like he pretty much built a schedule of like, okay, so as soon as we hit this day of the inspection process, like most of these jobs need to be done, like most of these inspections need to be done by these shops. And so he was always going around hounding the shops like, hey, did you get this done, did you get this done, did you get this done, because we can't get this done until like you get this first thing done. So there was like a guy that was in charge of doing that. And for me, I never really like had a problem with that because um, my job specifically, like we took panels off and then we inspected the panels and then wrote the job up for sheet metal to like fix. We pretty much did like mostly inspecting for the first half of this process, and then the last half of the process when we would fix like small stuff, so like broken clamps, broken hoses, tire changes, of course. Like if there's screws missing, like we weren't like super like we didn't have like super big stuff we did. We kind of in a way we cater to the other shops. So if like for example, if AR, which is the rigging guys, if sorry, they're called Aero Repair. If they needed to like, I don't know, fix something, but we needed to like remove paneling, we would have to remove the paneling for them, which was kind of like an annoyance. So
Okay.
we pretty much like cater to the other shops, if that makes sense.
No, that does. Yeah, it's the same out in the industrial setting. Some, I need to flip a breaker. Well, I got to go get an electrician to do that because I'm not allowed to do that. I can't remove a piece of piping because nope, you got to go get a pipe fitter for that. It's like that out there too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Did you guys have a large for changing tires? Did you guys have a large machine that would come and grab the thing and pull it off the plane?
Oh, I wish we had something like that, but we had to use our own back and hands to be able to take the
Oh,
tires off.
no. Oh,
Yeah.
no. Grunt work.
So oh, yeah, yeah, but, um, actually, so let me dive into this a little bit more. So this plane, when it comes to my career field, the inspection maintenance guy, they divided the plane into different sections. So there was the flight deck people, the troop compartment, the left wing and the right wing were 2 separate sections, and then the landing gear section. And I worked in the landing gear section the first, like, year and a half, 2 years, which was a blast because, this, I should say this hangar is also full of a lot of civilians, like retired guys, and they're like hilarious to work around.
Oh,
So in
yeah.
the gear section, I was changing tires like regularly, and I actually kind of came up with a really good system with it. So we would use a pallet jack, and we would put a pallet on it. And whenever we changed the tires, the plane was always on jacks, which you'll see a picture. You can actually show a picture right now if you want the plane on jacks.
Oh, yes, okay.
Uh, so whenever we changed the tires, the plane was on jacks, so the tires were off the ground, so it was really easy to do it. And then we would pallet jack the tire. Yeah, there you go. So that's like the plane that's like off the ground pretty much, and with the jacks. And I should say every time that the plane would come into the hangar and we would jack the plane pretty frequently. And so we would shimmy a pallet jack underneath of it, raise it up, and then raise it enough so that the tire can come out smoothly, and then that's how we would take the tire off. And I always, like, did it that way because I hated trying to lift it off the axle because it's really heavy,
Oh,
and, I wasn't really strong too, so, like, it takes, like, 2, 3 guys to do it.
well, yeah, I mean, industrial wise, when they go to do like say a front end loader or something, they have a machine and the thing comes up and it grabs the tire. Like it makes it so that guys don't have to struggle with pulling tires off. The machine does the job, grabs it after they take the bolts off there, the nuts holding it on, and they just pull it away. So I thought you guys would have something like that, but no dice, eh?
No, unfortunately, a lot of it was, like, grunt work, like, we had to do it ourselves, it is what it is, but, yeah, so, um, yeah, we would take tires off. Actually, if you can look there, see that top right photo, the skinny one?
This one
Yeah,
here.
that one. If you could show that one. So that is a jack mount, or what do they call it? But basically, the jack would sit on this like ball, and there's like 6 locations around the plane, and that's how we would lift the plane up with a special machine.
Okay.
And I don't have the picture of the machine, but it would just shoot hydraulic pressure to the jacks and then slowly raise it up. So
So
uh,
you got to make sure
yeah.
you're lifting up on the right part of the airframe, I guess, because otherwise you'll start bending things and breaking things.
Yes, I yeah, there's a whole, like, it's a really simple science to it, and we actually use a giant pendulum. It hangs from the inside of the cargo, and it helps, there's a guy inside that's communicating to the cart operator that tells them, like, "Hey, you're, like, front heavy," or, "Hey, you're back heavy," or, "Left or right heavy," and it's just to help them, like, when they're fully raising it up, and we only raise it off the ground, like, I don't know, 12 inches, like, it's not, like, super tall. It's not
Okay.
that high off the ground, but you have to still be careful, so, uh
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the plane weighs how much? Like, what are we
oh,
talking
I
here
don't
for weight?
remember, it's a lot. I don't
Yeah, so
remember, but it's a lot.
any kind of weight like that, yeah, you got to be super careful and make sure that that thing is balanced properly. You don't want it toppling over, no matter I know how high up off the ground it is. For
Yes,
sure.
and, one you could if you could show that top right photo, the new one that's there. Yeah, that's the landing gear. So there's the landing gear, pretty much off the ground, and so whenever the landing gear was off the ground, it's the easiest time to take the tires off and do the tire change. So
And was that a once a year thing? Did you guys have just look at the treads and be like, oh, okay, it's good enough, or did you have a way of measuring the thickness?
so when it comes to tire changes, tires are like one of the most frequent things that get changed on an airplane. Um, they get changed a lot, and they're changed based off of like the tread wear. They're changed based off of damage to the tire as well, like on the tread itself. Like if there's giant chunks missing, like if
Hmm.
there's a giant chunk missing, we have to take a depth gauge and measure like, okay, how much of the retread is like how much are we showing cord, like the cord inside the tire,
Right?
and like how much of like how deep into the cut is it? So like there's like some limitations, and thankfully for C5s, because there's like 28 tires on this plane, the limitations are not as strict. So like you can get away with like some damage, and then you'll just have to change it in like 2 landings or something. So
Whew,
oh, and sorry, my
28
bad.
tires.
Yeah, there's 28 tires. Yeah.
Whew.
And sorry, to answer your previous question about like when, so whenever the plane, I guess I should have prefaced this first. The plane goes into the hangar and it sits in the hangar for about 60 days. It's like a 60-day inspection. And so every time we have a plane in the hangar, we're always changing tires. Like there's never a time we never change tires. So
Okay.
now the quantity of tires, it depends on like if the people outside that had the plane previously, if they decided like, oh, we're not going to change the tires because it's going into the inspection dock, and then we get kind of screwed over and have to change, 10 plus tires. But yeah, like I said, the tires are changed based off of wear
Okay.
limit.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know because, people always want a nice smooth landing. They don't want to see the tires giving out on them.
Yes.
So that's good. Okay. So did you ever move around to any of the other groups or did you just stick with the section you were in?
No, unfortunately, I had to. In the Air Force or the military, you have to stay in the career field that you're in. Because at least in this hangar, you had to. In order to kind of get trained on other jobs, you had to kind of be recommended by your supervisor and his supervisor. But even then, in this inspection hangar, that was like never allowed because we already had all these other shops there. When we talk about my second job, that environment, the outside environment, is a little bit more loose with that because a lot of times you'll be working on the airplane, and you don't have all those specialties there with you. So it's good to be qualified to be able to do some of everybody's basic specialty, like their basic tasks. My job, the funny saying they had is they called us like a jack of all trades but master of none,
Yeah.
because we were required to know a little bit of everything, but we weren't even allowed to actually do everyone else's job. Like they had to do their own jobs. So no, I never really worked with like electrical or hydro or jets or any of those guys. They did their own stuff.
Okay. Um, yeah. Did you want to get on to or did you want to go back to looking at some more of those, that PowerPoint you had going on there?
Yeah,
A little
we
more of
can
that?
keep going with the PowerPoint.
Sure. Let's do that.
Yeah, you can go to the next slide because that's pretty much like everything I've mentioned. All right, so this is a fun photo, and there's two photos. There's this photo and the next photo. So, as I mentioned earlier, you can see the stands, right? Like surrounding the plane, the maintenance stands. There's two off to the side right now. Those are called, we call those the aft maintenance stands, and those ones we actually had to tow them into position. So we had to hook up a truck, a big truck, which you'll see like way at the end of the slideshow, and move them into position. The one that I'm standing on right now is technically a movable building.
Ooh,
it's it's as tall as the tail, in fact, a little bit taller, and it's a giant building that moves, and it's a big maintenance stand. And we would move it into position like I want to say a third of the way into the inspection process, because then we needed to inspect the tail of the plane, of course, and inspect the rudders on it and the elevators and the rudder and the elevator. So the next picture, if you show it, shows the like midsection of the building, which is where the controls are, and as you can see, it's like cut. It's cut to a shape to like fit in between or on the tail, around the tail. So yeah, like we always joked about it. It's like if you got qualified on that, you were qualified to drive like a movable building because it's tall. It's really tall.
That's like the ultimate scaffolding right there. Like you move it into place and put it right around, and you're good to go. You can get to each part of the plane you need to get to.
Yes. Oh, so if you look on this actually gives a good picture. You see like the yellow like bumpers on the metal rails?
Yep.
So what happens is, and this is the same system for all of the other maintenance stands. All the way, so if you look on the left side, you can't see the holes, but there's like some holes all the way to the left, and that is attached to a what do you call it? Like a socket mount, and then it's attached to like a rotating my terminology is bad, but like a rotating like axle or whatever.
Okay.
And in order to extend out those stands, we would have to the slides. We call them slides. You would have to use a giant like corded drill with like a giant like a long extension, and then you would like drill out the slides, and you have to do it like individually. So when I said that it took like a day, like half a day to a day to like set up the maintenance stands, it's because you would hear like for a half a day to a day of people just wailing away on drills, extending out those slides.
Okay.
So it took time. It was ridiculous. Oh, and I should mention all of the stands can be raised and lower because we have to raise the plane and then raise the stands as well in order to to have the height match.
Jake D says it's a big plane,
Yes, it
but
is.
it, but is not kaiju sized. And hello to you, Godzillionaire. Good to see you.
Yes, hail Godzillionaire and hail Alex Moore and also Comrade Leader. Oh, and the Underground.
And underground. We'll move along to the next slide here.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's going on here?
Um, so this is I just took some photos and slapped them together. So the first photo is showing the power cart, which is like an electrical cart that or sorry, it gives electricity to the plane so that you can have your lights on inside and you can do like basic systems check. And then the next two photos are the inside of the plane when they're inside the hangar, and there's like they remove all the seats. So as you can see here, like and you'll see some photos maybe in the future. Um, the seats are gone because what happens is they actually rip off the blue flooring and they inspect the bottom, like the actual flooring itself, to make sure there's like no damages or mold or whatever.
Ah,
So it's kind of weird, like seeing because this third picture on the right is all passenger seats because this plane doubles as like a passenger plane as well. They can like transport people.
okay.
So they just remove all the seats out and so they could do their inspection without any issues. And then this middle picture is actually like the flying maintenance teams area, and that's their table. And there's like four seats that sit there, two on each side of the table, and those get removed so they can inspect the bottom area. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this slide. You got the power card on the left, and then the inside of the plane with no seats. Yep, and
Okay.
so the one on the left, I think, is the same picture on accident, but it's, no seats. The one in the middle is just taken back, like farther back. So the one in the middle, that is the stairs to go down to the cargo area. And then on the left, you can kind of see the corner of the galley. So there's like a galley right there that they can cook food like on a normal airplane. And so I just took a photo farther back. And then the right side is the flight deck, and I have some better photos of the flight deck, but this is just a photo of the flight deck with the seat still installed.
Oh,
Um,
there we go.
I think I'm trying to remember that seat that is like at 90 degrees to the front seat. I want to say that gets removed. I'm not sure. I think it gets removed during the inspection because it's kind of in the way. Yeah, I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it gets removed. So this might have been like after the inspection they reinstalled it. So, but yeah, that's it for this slide.
Moving along.
All right, so this is like a maintenance job that I did. So another area that I failed to mention was the cargo slash aft ramp inspection, which was a like a section of the plane. And so I worked that section of the plane with a one civilian, and him and we focused on the aft ramp of the plane, and these are the toes of the ramp. So it allows vehicles to be driven on to the plane itself. And so we would inspect this arm on the toe to make sure that it's working correct, like it's not cracked and it's like it has all the parts there and whatnot. So that's just a quick picture of like the top of the toe, or excuse me, the top of the ramp with the toe resting on it. So if you go to the next photo, you should see the whole aft ramp. Oh, okay,
Oh,
that's the okay. It's fine. This is the aft ramp when it's opened from like an outside perspective. And if you look at the top of the plane, you'll see like black rectangles,
yep,
kind of like on the ceiling. So that's the aft ramp itself, and the toes are on the front side of it. You can't see it. It's like on the opposite side, and that whole ramp actually rotates down and locks to that bottom section where the white is. It will lock onto that, and then they will all move together to the ground to then let vehicles drive onto the plane. And unfortunately, I don't have a photo of that. But so yeah, I inspected that big door that's on the ceiling, and then I inspected the white part, the ramp itself,
yep.
and I also inspected the side doors. You see like the side doors there? Those are called the I think they're called the aft side doors. And then there's one more door which you can't really see too well, but it's that gray, big, skinny one on the top. That is called the center door. So I would actually climb up inside of that because you could actually climb up in it and inspect it, and
Ooh,
get like real dirty because it gets really dirty up there.
I bet.
So
How heavy of machinery are we talking parking in there? You guys putting like Jeeps in there or Bradleys or tanks
um
or
so they can fit. I think the fact is they can fit like two or three like M1 Abrams. It's either two or three. Um, you'll see some photos later on of like the cargo that's in the planes, but yeah, you can fit some pretty big stuff. I've seen helicopters, I've seen big trucks. Um, and yes, Godzillionaire has a great a great comment here.
just think about how many waifus you could load on that thing. I mean, hey,
Probably
why
not
not?
enough.
Bring them over.
Not
Drop
enough.
drop them. Also, Jake B wants to know, you make burritos in flight?
Oh, of course you can. There's a microwave. You can make burritos. There's a microwave.
There you go.
um,
Godzilla also says that that chair there looked like a jump seat. That
yeah,
one was at 90
unfortunately, there's
degrees.
no jump seats, but yeah, I can see your point. But that's it for this photo. So if you look at the next photo, okay, there you go. So that left photo, you can see those toes I was talking about earlier, and
Okay.
on the the bright yellow on the
Yep.
top there, that is about 10 to maybe 11 feet off the ground. It's really tall, maybe
Whew.
12 feet. It's pretty tall. So, um, you need like a maintenance stand to get up to it. Um, and then this is just a photo of like the aft section of the plane, the back section. So there's the ramp, and then we had some big fans in here for ventilation because in the summertime it gets really hot. Um, there's the ladder to go up to the troop compartment, which is where all those where the galley was at, and also where the seats were supposed to be at, but they're not there. Um,
Okay.
and then the right photo is facing towards the front of the plane, and as you can see, we have a couple skyjacks in there. Yeah, Alex is right. All the C5s I saw were two tanks. Yeah, a lot of times you see photos that are like that. But he said he was near an army base, so that makes sense because they're always loading their heavy equipment on them.
The airplane has more living space than your average New York City apartment. It's
Yeah,
cheaper
that's
too.
true. I wouldn't want to live in this, but yeah. Um, yeah, so that right photo faces towards the front of the plane. We have these skyjacks. That's what you guys call them
Yep.
in the
Yep.
civilian
Aerial
world.
platforms or whatever you want to call them. Yeah.
Yep, these ones are battery powered, and it allows us to inspect the ceiling, because there's a lot of cabling that's on the ceiling for like the flight controls. Because this plane is actually very mechanical with its flight controls, because it is an older plane.
Oh,
So
it's not fly
yeah,
by wire. It's more like you got your hydraulics and your physical linkages and such.
yeah. So this plane is strictly mechanical. The next plane I worked on is fly-by-wire, and you'll see photos of it later. But yeah, this one is
Okay.
specifically mechanical. Um, yep. And so if you go to the next photo, I think it will show you the door, the ramp. I hope it does. Oh, it doesn't. So maybe it's later on. I thought I put it in here. I'm pretty sure I did, but anyways, so this is the stance. I think this is right wing, and as you can see, you have the maintenance stance surrounding the engine, and you can
Mhm.
walk underneath the wing. You can walk around it. You can walk over the engine itself. So um, yeah, it just shows. This is just a picture to show you the maintenance stance and how convenient they are to be able to like fix stuff. So
Oh, that is
um,
nice. I would love something like that when I'm working on equipment, just something that can get me right in close,
oh yeah, it's really good.
but it's never like
Um,
that.
yeah. Well, you talked about the big trucks to be able to take the tires off of like, forklifts, but we have to do it by hand. So there's a what do you call it, like a switch with this. Um,
Yeah.
and then here's the plane on the left getting ready to get towed into the hangar. As you can see, all of the slides are retracted so that it can come in smoothly. And every time we tow a plane into the hangar, there's like 50 people watching like every corner of the plane to make sure it doesn't get damaged. It's quite the
Yep.
operation.
Yep.
Um, so I was standing up there just watching as it comes in. Do you have clown stabilizer on the wings? I think I know what he's talking about. Are you talking about winglets? Because some planes have winglets. Not this plane. This plane doesn't have that.
Maybe
um,
Jakey's just looking at clowns. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, Jake D. This right photo is the outside environment that I hinted to earlier, and every time whenever we did this inspection on the plane, it would be outside first. So we do like like a prep to bring it into the hangar, and
Yeah.
then once it was done with the inspection, we would push it outside and do like our final checks on it outside, which always involved like an engine run. So,
And snowing, I see.
oh my goodness, yeah, those were
Yeah.
terrible, terrible winter months.
Uh,
Yeah. So,
yep. Yep.
yeah, that's just a picture of the outside. So you can see there's the tow vehicle. It's in between those two white trucks. That's the tow vehicle with the tow bar. You'll get a
Oh,
better
yes.
picture later on.
We'll go to the
Oh,
next
sorry, what
one
was
then.
that? Oh,
That's it's all good.
um, so this is the flight deck. A little bit better picture that I took, and yeah, so you can see all the the dials and
That is a
nodes
lot.
and
That's a
screens. Yeah,
man,
at
oh,
first
man.
glance, it's pretty overwhelming at first glance, but once you understand, like, once you work with it and you figure out, like, okay, I know where like, I remember where stuff is at. It becomes a little bit easier. So,
Okay.
um, but yep, that's basically it. This is actually this photo is not taken from my inspection days. It's taken from my Japan days, but because I was outside, so it was a better. You could see the inside better with the natural light.
For sure.
So, yep.
Gajiner says, amazes me how a plane can be so big it needs anhedral wings just to fly properly. I don't know what he means by anhedral. Can you shed some light on that?
And Hedril, I actually don't know what he's talking about there. He might need to elaborate.
Using those big words on us, Godzillionaire.
Yeah.
The plane needs two circus clowns for balance, one for wing.
Oh, that makes sense. Johnny
Uh,
Bravo. Okay,
there
okay.
you go. Oh, mama. This monster needs winglets. The wingtip vortices are probably insane. Oh, okay. Godzilla means wings pointing down versus pointing up.
This plane, the wings point down. The next plane that I worked on, I'll hint to, which is the C-17. Those have winglets, and the wingtips point up.
That is neat.
So here is so the previous photo you saw the pilot and co-pilot seat. This is the flight engineer seat, which flight engineer is kind of like a old school job and position for airplanes. Nowadays, airplanes don't need flight engineers because the computers can do everything.
Aha.
However, this plane still requires a flight engineer. So this is, oh, excuse me, this is his seat, and he controls the fuel flow. He monitors the electrical. He monitors the hydraulics, the air conditioning. He monitors everything while the plane is flying. and so he has a pretty important position, and he is the only member for air crew. If you're talking about people that sit up here, he's the only member that is not an officer. He's actually an enlisted rank. So,
Oh,
um, it's an interesting position.
yeah, that's
Yes, it is
crazy.
the Globe Master, Jake D. The C-17 Globe Master.
Jake D knows his stuff, eh?
All right, so this is the C5 once again with the seats inside. On the left, as you can see, interesting fact: all the seats face backwards on the plane. Sorry,
Oh,
the passenger seats, they face backwards. So I've never flown on this plane. I wish I did, but it would be kind of interesting, like flying and taking off backwards, because that's
yeah.
how the seats are positioned.
Yeah, because usually you're throwing back into your seat when the plane's taking off, but this way you would be throwing forward or
Full-
in. Okay.
yeah, I don't understand it, but yeah. Um, and then the photos on the right is just some like cargo that's on the plane. Um, I mean, the one that's so it's kind of funny. The top right one is not even full at all, but the bottom right one is for sure full. Like I've seen this plane full of just straight
Oh yeah.
cargo. It's crazy how much they put on here, but and it still flies with all this cargo. So um, I don't know how it gets off the ground, but it does.
Yeah. Sheer
So
brute force.
yes. All right, so this is a different hangar. So sometimes we would tow the plane into a different hangar because other people needed to work on it. So this was actually the hangar that was next to us. This was the aero repairs hangar. And so I think they had this plane, and because there was like some major stuff they had to do with it, and then after that it was going to get towed to the flight line, the outside area. So I pretty sure I actually towed this plane, if I remember correctly. I pushed it out of the hangar and pulled it onto its parking spot outside. So and if you could see on the top left photo, there's a yellow maintenance stand. Apparently those were the old inspection stands that were in my old hangar. So and they were, like, really bad and, like, really dangerous and unsafe. So the military there spent, like, good money, buying those nicer stands that you saw earlier.
Oh,
So
that's good.
this shop inherited the old stands, and then before I left that base, they actually got rid of all those old stands, and that shop got the same new stands that I had in my old, hangar. So
That's good. There's something to be said about, using safe equipment. I mean, no matter which industry you're in, you don't like to see, old junky stuff being used because it's going to fail any minute and hurt a bunch of people, you know?
yes, yes, this is not a good thing to happen.
We'll switch to the next one.
All right, so yeah, here's the stat I put. So it's about 20 meters tall is the tail height from the ground to the top.
Woo.
Uh, and the photo on the left is my buddy climbing up inside the tail. So this plane allows you to climb from pretty much the bottom of the tail to the top of the tail with a hatch being on top. And we have to do inspections inside this small space inside the tail. So I just wanted to include that because it's just a cool photo, and it's interesting climbing inside that.
Oh, it looks tight in there. It looks like you got to really keep yourself tucked in or you're going to start whacking yourself as you're climbing through that ladder.
Oh yeah, if you're your average, American sized person, it's pretty tough. It's pretty snug in there. And my
Wow.
buddy's a small dude, so like he fits in there pretty well.
Okay. Next, we'll go ahead to the next one here.
Yeah, so this is taken at my when I worked in Japan, and this is outside, and we were doing a window change, which is a real hassle to do a window change, especially with no maintenance stands. So,
Oh man. Yeah. Did you get on
yep.
a aerial? You're on an aerial platform then trying to do that change out?
Y- yes, I'm on a boom lift right now.
Okay.
And I don't remember, actually this is like one of the last couple jobs I did before I got out. I think I was helping install screws. As you can see, there's screws covering the entire panel,
Yeah.
the entire window. So we were installing those screws, and somebody has to sit on the inside and hold the nut and washer in place as I screw the screws in.
Whoa, that sounds a little sketchy there, a little dangerous, don't you think?
No,
They
no, no.
weren't worried
So,
about
oh, what do you mean by that?
I was gonna
Actually,
say you're not worried about getting, a screw into their hand or something because 'cause they're holding it?
no, no, no. So, like if you look, how do I explain this? So it's not a sharp screw. It's like a regular screw, and all
Oh,
I
okay.
do is I put it through the hole, and then they pre-thread it, and then they have their long like socket and attached to it, and then when they're ready for me to like turn it all the way in, like to torque it,
Yep.
then I just torque it in. There's like there's nothing bad with it. Like
Oh,
that's
okay.
normal operation for us. Yeah.
In my mind, I was thinking, sheet metal screw, not machine screw.
Oh, okay. No, it's a machine screw. It's like a flat,
Okay.
end to it, and yeah, yeah, it's a flat
Yeah.
screw or a
Okay,
machine
yeah.
screw.
So there must have been a lot that went on that just to hold that one window in then.
Oh yeah. So as you can see, there's like over 100 screws there, I think, and
Oof.
you have to. So um the maintenance manual tells you you have to torque them down in a certain pattern, and there's a photo of the window, and above every screw hole there's a number, and so you have to chase the number. Like you start with one and you torque that one. You don't torque
Bolt
it all the way
pattern,
down. You just yeah, bolt pattern. Sorry, that's what it's
bolt
called, a
pattern,
bolt
there you go,
pattern.
yeah.
And with 100 screws, that takes some
Oh,
time.
you ever forget what number you're on? "Oh, was I doing 49 or 50? Oh."
I've only done like maybe two window changes, and so I've always paid attention.
There you go. Oh, man. That I don't envy you with that job. That's
Oh, we always dreaded whenever we heard that there was a cracked windshield or
yeah,
yeah,
I
window.
bet.
All right, so this is an interesting photo because there are three models of the C5.
Yep.
There is the C5A, which is the oldest model, and they're pretty much non-existent because they got like decommissioned or like they're not flying pretty much. There's the C5 Model B, which is like the next version of it, and I'll get back to the B in a second. This model that I'm showing you here is called the C model. And the C model, there's only two in the entire world. And what makes this one special is that if you look at the ceiling, it's like all gray, and that's because there's no passenger compartment, no troop compartment. It's completely
Oh,
removed. And the reason being is those planes are stationed in California, and those planes help NASA when they like load rockets and stuff into the planes. So there's like enough room to load a rocket or like whatever they NASA loads into these planes.
that's awesome.
So
That's a lot of space.
yeah. So it was kind of I this plane came into my inspection hangar like there's only two of them, so I was able to work on both of them, and oh my goodness, it was so nice because there was no troop compartment, which means you don't have an extra galley to inspect. You don't have an extra two lavatories to inspect. You also don't have like all of the seats you have to remove, and then also inspect the flooring for the seats.
Yep.
So that is a very nice thing. And then what else? Oh, and then also all the emergency equipment that's up there as well, because there's emergency equipment for the passengers.
Okay.
So yeah, it was really nice not having to inspect that. So um, oh yeah, there's the door on that right photo, that top right photo. There's the aft ramp door that I mentioned earlier that you climb on top of.
Ah, yes.
Um, yeah, that's like that 10 to 12-foot tall door, and yeah, and then that bottom right photo, that is showing we call that area the flap power pack area, which is basically where the flap, which is on the wing itself, on the back on the back side of the wing is your flaps that controls like your don't I'm gonna get killed in the comments for this. I want to say your pitch, like going up and down, and it also controls your lift as well. So the pack power area is like where all of the linkages come together.
Okay.
And if you had the troop compartment there, all you have to do is walk up to it and you like fit through a little hole and then you're inside it. However, because this is the C model and they don't have that, you have to take a maintenance stand up to that area to be able to get inside of it. So it's not too much of an inconvenience, but it's just like an extra thing you have to do is use a maintenance stand to get up there. Um,
It's just enough of a inconvenience.
but yeah, so yeah, this is the C model, and then what I meant to say is the B model. All of the C5s got upgraded to what is now called the M model. So basically, they upgraded the computers. They got rid of a lot of like the analog system, and they put in digital stuff. And they did a bunch of like refurbishments to the whole airframe. So all of the B models became M models, and the C models as well became M models too. Like they got the same treatment.
Okay.
So
That's cool when that happens, because then it's less work for some guys, but then more work for others, because switching from analog to digital.
yeah, the it was weird because I've actually seen the analog. It was before I was around before the last plane got upgraded to the M model. So I saw the analog system and I was like, holy cow, like people were flying like this and like it's like completely different. It's just really weird. So it was good that they were able to upgrade this and now they're all like using modern technology for the most part.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, once again, it's just some more photos of the inside. Not a whole lot to see there. You could see a giant panel taken off there on the left photo.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that panel. So this airplane has 4 hydraulic systems, and that panel is just an access panel to the one of the hydraulic systems. So we always just took off all the panels inside the cargo area so we can see everything and inspect everything. And then whenever it's time to push the plane out of the hangar, we would just put all the panels back on. Which I
And were
actually
those
like doing that job. It was really easy and it took like an entire day. So you knew you were going to be spending an entire day putting panels on and it was fun.
There you go. And were all those panels aluminum?
Probably yes, because they were very light and very flexible.
Yeah, I would
Yeah, I
think
think they
it's
were
like
aluminum. Yeah.
aircraft aluminum or whatever, and use that instead of steel, as lighter and all that, and just as strong.
Yes. Let's see. Jake D has a question.
Oh yes. I heard a plane's getting a thing called block upgrade. Is that what this is?
So the only time I've heard the term block upgrade is when they refer to fighters, to fighter jets. Um, so for example, like the F-16 has 2 different blocks. My old boss told me about this, but I don't remember. So there's like 2 blocks, and he always referred it to as a block. I've never heard of that for a cargo airplane being referred to as a block upgrade.
Huh. And what are we looking at
So,
here? Is that you on top of the plane?
yep, that is me on top of the C-17 Globemaster and doing a over the wing inspection. This is my second job, or like when I moved to Japan.
Okay.
And yeah, so so I'll explain my second job real quickly. So what would happen is I would go to work. I work 12-hour shifts, sometimes 14, 16-hour shifts because turnover was terrible. And we would get a schedule like, hey, these planes are coming in. So you and you are on this plane when it comes down, and you are on this other plane. And so sometimes it was like 2 to 3 people per plane, depends on who was at work. So the plane would land, we would marshal it onto the spot, and then we would like park it, and then we would get with the air crew and be like, all right, so do you guys have any problems with the flight? If not, then we would go right into a simple recovery inspection. So that entails it depends on like there's different levels in inspections. So I'll just keep it simple by saying like we would inspect the inside when it comes to like the flight deck. So like um, there was like a list of things we had to check. It was always the same. Like it never changed. And one of those things we would check is over outside the plane, over the wing. So we're just inspecting for damage or if like things are missing or whatever. So in order to get on top of the plane, especially since there's no maintenance stands, you have to use a harness, a fall protection harness.
I see. I
And
see. Yeah.
yeah, everyone got trained on that, and I eventually had to train people on it. So Yeah, so that's just me doing over the wing inspection. And there's a hatch, which you'll see like kind of later on. There's a hatch that gets you up to the top there for the C-17. So,
Nice.
oh, and then to wrap up the job, so once the plane was done and inspected, we would sign off the inspection and then put it to bed by closing it up. And then whenever it was time for it to leave, like the next day, we would get there earlier, prepare the plane for the air crew, turn on power, do all this other stuff. And then once they were satisfied with the plane, they would take it over, and then like we would just be waiting for them to like tell us, hey, we're ready to go, and then we would marshal them out, and then they would taxi out and go to the runway and take off. So
Nice. Now with your fall arrest there, what are you hooked onto? Is there an anchor point on the plane?
yes, so the C5 and the 17 have two different anchor points, and so there's two different harness kits you have to use. So the C5, oh sorry, on the both planes, so there's these holes that are like found around the plane, that go down the spine and they go down the wings as well. On the C5, the mounting mechanism is actually screw on. So
Okay.
I don't have a picture of it unfortunately, but basically your harness is connected to these like bungee straps they look like, and I'm they're much safer looking than a bungee strap.
I hope
And
so.
yeah, and on the end of it is your fall retention or your fall protection or whatever device.
Yep.
And then on the end of that is actually, sorry, it's flipped. Your fall retention device is on your back, and then you have the bungee straps. On the end of the bungee straps are these screw-on mounts. Like I think we call them like rings, like D rings or whatever.
Yep.
And
Okay.
so you would screw it down onto the fuselage of the plane, and then you would clip into it, and then you would go to the next hole and screw it down and clip into it, and then you have to go back to the previous one and unscrew it, and then you would have to leapfrog your way across the plane.
Yep. So you're
So
always tied off no matter what. That's good.
yes. So the C5 one was a little bit of an annoyance because you had to screw it down every single time. However, on the 17, and also I forgot to mention on the C5, all of those holes had a plastic plug you had to unscrew out, I think. So it didn't make any sense. It was stupid. But the 17 uses a like a ball, what do you call it? Like a ball peen. So on the mount itself, you would push a button and the balls would become loose, and then you would push it into the hole and then let go, and then it would like push out the little
Okay.
bearings.
Yep. Yep. It's like a quick connect.
Yes, exactly. Because you can get across the 17 a lot quicker with that. Just push in, move, and then
Yep.
leapfrog a lot quicker. So
Yep.
that was a lot nicer.
Somebody came up with something better than just screwing it in. They got sick and tired of it, and they're like, we need something better to get from across the plane. Nice.
Yes, yes. So yeah, that's just over the wing inspection. And yeah, so this is the inside of the C-17. The middle picture I took from the internet. This is actually an Australian C-17, which it's exactly the same.
Oh
Just
yeah.
it has the Australian photo there. So, or sorry, Australian flag. Um, at least I think that's the Australian flag. But
Looks like it to me. Yep.
so yeah, this is a 17, pretty much empty. There's your jump seats there. I think it was Jake D that was asking earlier. The jump seats. I mean, you guys seen plenty of movies. They always use C-17 in the movies. So, but the right photo, if you look there, you see exit, and then on the top there, you will see a hatch. Um, that is the hatch that gets to the top of the plane, where you saw the photo of me standing on top of the plane. And what's interesting is to get to this little like balcony, I guess you can call it, you have to go into the flight deck of the 17. As soon as you go up the stairs, you turn around and you'll see two crew beds, and there's a door, like a metal door. You have to open the metal door, and then you'll see the balcony. And then as soon as you get, then you have to like climb into it, like actually crawl into the balcony, and then you could stand up and then go to the hatch there and get outside.
Whew. Hatch is the moonroof, apparently.
Yeah.
Figures.
Yeah, the moonroof. Um, I wish I had a photo of the C5, the inside, the flight deck, because their version of the hatch is actually like way easier. That photo I showed you earlier of the flight engineer seat. Basically, if you turn around and you like take 2 steps and you look to the left, you'll see a ladder that like pops out. Like you pop the ladder out and you
Yep,
look up and the hatch is right there, and you just like can step out. So
easy.
there's no crawling through anything. You just stand up and do it. So yeah, so this 17 on the left, this was a recovery, so we were doing an inspection on it, and unfortunately we had to do a tire change on the nose tires.
Oh,
But on the 17, it's actually a really easy job because there's only 2 tires. It's actually really easy to do it. If you can see in the top left, one of my buddies, he's doing an inspection on the engine inlet. He's inspecting the what are they called again? The rotators, basically the fans, I guess you can call them. I don't
like
remember right now.
the blades of the
Yeah, the
blades of the
blades. Sorry,
turbine.
the blades. Yes, the blades, the turbine blades or whatever. Um, so he's wearing like a pocketless coverall, and
Ah,
he's got like a special mat he's standing on, because you can't have any foreign objects in there while you're inspecting. And actually, I think if I remember correctly, that guy was a engine mechanic, so like that was his specialty. And but any of us can do the inspection. So um, that's one thing I should have probably prefaced by saying was when you're in this outside environment, everybody is qualified to do the inspections because all of the inspections are basic inspections. Like they're not career field specific.
okay.
So yeah, so this, like I said, this left photo, we're doing a tire change. That little piece of equipment right there is a uh I'm drawing a blank right now. What do you call it? What's the tire changing thing you use for your cars? A
Jack?
Yeah, jack. Dude, I'm so sorry.
That's all
It's
right.
a it's
Happens
a
to the best of us.
this one is specifically designed for this plane. It's a nose jack. And it looks like we have a wild corporeal life form in the chat.
Oh, he doesn't see you guys. He doesn't see you guys anymore.
Uh-oh.
We're
That
still here.
Yeah, I think he's referring to a Mr. Jake D and a Mr. Woopa
Oh yeah,
Troopa.
maybe. Eh. Good to see you here,
um,
Nerd Boyle.
yeah, man. Thanks for stopping by. Uh, yeah. So this nose jack, basically, I think we called it a rhino jack because it like has the rhino horn on it and it would like lift up the nose gear.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was called a Rhino jack. It was really easy to use. So that was a big piece of equipment per se that we used. That toolbox, that's actually a toolbox. If you can see right there, that black crate
Yep.
or container, that is a toolbox specifically built for tire changes. So if so this plane came down and we did the inspection, or like, oh, we gotta change this tire, we would go back to the custodian tool crib and be like, hey, we need a tire change kit for the C-17, and they would give us this box right here, and it has all the tools we need to change the tire,
Nice. Nothing more, nothing less. Just everything you need.
basically, except we would have to check out the torque wrench because that was always separate. That had to be a separate item.
Ah, yes.
So,
And with
and
torque
then
wrenches,
yeah.
they have to be checked out every year. They have to be calibrated just to make sure they're on spec.
Yes, there's a special, actually, it's we always made fun of these people because they had like the easiest job in the Air Force, but in the maintenance side. But there was a specific career field that inspected torque wrenches and anything that had like a calibration to them.
Okay.
And yeah, those guys had a cake job.
I bet.
So um yeah, and then on the right photo, that is a landing light that got busted, probably by like a rock or a bird, most likely a rock.
Oof.
And those things are really easy to change out. The only thing that's annoying about them is having to tag out the electrical system for them. Um,
Okay.
but I actually caught that. Like as soon as it landed, I was like, cool, we're gonna have to change that." And my boss was out there and he didn't even see it. And I was like, "Hey, did you see this?" He's like, "Oh wow, I didn't even notice that." I was like, "Yep, that's gonna be I'll change it out because it's not too difficult."
Good
So,
eye. Good eye. You gotta like that when you spot something.
yep. So yeah,
For,
that's
for
pretty.
the,
Oh,
sorry, for your buddy that's in the engine there, the turbine. D What does he have to do to lock that out so that nobody gets it into their head to fire it up?
let's see if I can remember correctly. I want to say anytime they did that. Oh, you know what? That's right. So in your industry, you guys have like a lockout tagout type system.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, so we have that as well in the maintenance world, the aircraft maintenance world, and so we use these like paper tags for the airplane. And
Hmm.
basically, whenever we wrote a job up that needed to be um, like this type of job to inspect the engines, we would write up a tag for it, and we would attach the maintenance manual would tell us exactly like where to hang the tag. So I think actually it looks like actually no, I'm wrong because the power is still connected to this plane. So I'm guessing he probably tagged out the engine controls, like to turn over the engines.
Yeah.
I wanna say, but I don't remember exactly because it's been a couple years now. So yeah, yeah. So there was a tag out system, and
Okay.
he would have done that. He would have done that.
Yeah, just my curiosity. Just like and Godzilla says on older planes you lock out the fuel pump
Oh,
or the
that's
starter.
definitely like way before my time then. If that's the case, but dude, I can't remember. I want to say he had to have tagged out the engine start switches or something. If that's my best guess, because that's like if you tag out the engine start switches, like that's the only thing that's going to turn over the engine.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And Whoopa figures that you took some joyrides after hours in the planes.
oh, I wish, man. Like I said earlier, I never got to fly on the C5, but I got to fly on the C-17, which was interesting. But yeah, you're right, Godzillionaire. He doesn't have the cowls open. The cowls he's referring to is the side of the engine. So the engine, at least on the 17, has two cowl doors, if I remember correctly. Basically, you can open up the sides of the engine so you can inspect inside the engine, like
Nice.
the external part of the turbine. So, um, yeah, so that's it for those photos. And here's the refueling, which was always my favorite part of the job. And I don't say that sarcastically because it actually was really easy to refuel these planes.
I bet. Hook up the hose, ground it, and you're good.
Yeah, ground it first and then hook up the hose.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, in
Yeah,
that order.
yeah. So this is 17 refueling, really simple. There's the refuel panel on the left. I couldn't really get a better picture than that. You can actually see a pad or what do you call that? Like a stabilizer. Uh,
Yeah.
the reason why the stabilizer is down is because they're loading cargo while we're refueling the plane. That's like very normal for that to happen.
Okay.
Um, but one thing that I really liked about the C-17 is that it had an external refuel panel, which is what you're looking at on the left side. On the C5, in order to refuel the plane, you had to be inside in that flight engineer seat, and you had to watch the fuel go inside. Um, and I should say that the 17 requires two people to refuel, where the C5 requires three, because you need a third person outside as a fire guard.
Oh, really?
Whereas this, yeah, whereas the C-17, the fuel guy that's at this panel here can double up as a fire guard.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
there was a
um,
chance of the fuel catching on fire then?
I mean, there's always that chance. I've never seen it happen, and I've never heard of it happening, but there's always that chance. I guess the way it would happen is if electrical signals like static or something. I don't know. They always like were super adamant about us like being careful around it, but I don't know. It never happened. I've never seen it happen. And it never happened. Not
Okay.
saying it never will happen, but yeah, it wasn't as high risk as you might think it is.
Okay. No, that's fair enough.
Yeah, so there's the fuel truck on the right, and then
Oh,
the what do you call them? The cables for talking, because we use headsets to talk to each other.
ah, yes.
Yeah, Jake D puts it right. Only one smoke break away from disaster.
Don't flick your butt over here.
Yeah, this is in the 70s and 80s when things were a little bit more wild.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, so this is an interesting photo that I forgot I had. So this is the 17. We were doing an inspection at nighttime because I used to work night shift, and
Ooh.
we worked 3 months at a 3 months at a time nights, and it was terrible. Um, and so as you can see here, there's a small piece of the airplane missing. It's pretty much like the trim piece of this of the wing.
Mhm.
And so at first when we found it, we're like, "Oh crud, is this like written up in the log?" And sure enough, it was. So otherwise, like we would have to go through like a whole paperwork process. Like, when did you discover this? Where do you think it would have fallen out of? Like, it could have fallen from flight. All this nonsense.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but it was recorded already, so we were fine with that.
Whew.
So yeah, and we're on a stand too. We're on like a regular maintenance stand there, but yeah, so here's my favorite part of the job, which is driving the big vehicles. So I got to drive a lot of big vehicles for this job, and this is one of my favorite vehicles here. We call this the Uke, or the tow vehicle. And I'm actually training this guy right here because I've towed these planes so many times that I became like a trainer, and so I was training him how to tow the C5. And as you can see there, there's the tow bar, and the tow bar connects to the four nose wheels, and they connect on the sides of the wheel. There's like a big like a mold, like a attachment point,
Okay.
and they attach to the wheels, and you pull it from there. Um, and we use these big tow trucks to pull the planes. The C-17 towing is like way more simple. It's like this skinny bar that you attach to the plane. So this bar you see here, this tow bar,
Yep.
you cannot move it by yourself. You need like two people to move that bar.
Whew.
It's heavy and it's wide, but the C-17 tow bar is like really small, and you can move it by yourself because it's like really light. And it's like really easy to use. It's unbelievable how easy it is to use. Um, so anyways, yeah. So this is my buddy. He's going to tow the C5. Towing a C5 is a lot different than towing a C-17 because there's actually two pivot points. So if you look here on the front of the tow vehicle, red hookup, that is one pivot point,
Mhm.
and then the wheels themselves are a separate pivot point as well. So when you're turning this when you're towing, actually it's for both planes. When you're towing them, you have to keep in mind the actually no, sorry, it's only the C5, the two pivot points. So towing a C5, especially when you're pushing it, like because it looks like he's going to push it, but he's actually just hooking it up.
Okay.
um that is, how do I say this? If you turn the wheel of the truck to the right, you're actually going to be pushing the plane left, or
Yeah.
right. I can't remember. It's like opposite of what you think it is.
Yeah, it's like a
So
B train or something if you're a semi driver. Like, if you got like a 2 trailers and you're trying to back them up or whatever, that's you have, like, 2 pivot points that you have to
yes,
worry
that's
about.
exactly it. Yes. Yep. So yeah, so like I said, my first job in the hangar, they towed it in every time. I only towed at that job a couple times. We would tow it into. I actually forgot about this. There's one more shop that actually didn't work in that hangar, and it was the fuel shop. So the fuel shop, they touched the plane pretty much at the end of the inspection process. So we would tow the plane into their hangar, and then they would do their fuel checks. And so I actually got to tow the planes a couple times into that hangar. But when I came to Japan and did this job in Japan, I towed like planes regularly. It was almost like every couple months I was towing a plane because they're like, "Hey, you have the skills to tow, right? So you're gonna be doing it." Okay. I mean, I didn't complain because I actually like towing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, so I towed it, and then eventually I got promoted, so I got to be a craftsman, and I was supervising the tows, which is like a bigger responsibility, and that was a lot
nice.
of fun.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
these, uh, these little vehicles here, they got a lot of jam to them, don't they? You can really, they got the low end torque for moving those heavy planes.
Oh, yes. This is there's like, 2 different models, like, this is, like, the basic model we always use, and then there was another model we had, which was, like, it's actually the ones that you would see at airports. They're, like, really low, and, the cab can actually raise up. You can raise the cab up so you can see behind you if you need to. And I like that model to a certain degree, but I prefer this one that we're staring at now
Oh
because I
yeah,
felt I could. It's kind of weird, but I could feel the whole truck because of how small it is, how compact it is, and the steering. I could feel the steering wheel. I could feel like where I'm going with it. So I like this model a lot better.
yeah, that does look good. I think we're
And that
getting up
plane in
into
the.
the.
Oh,
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, no,
No, no, you
no.
go ahead.
I was going to say we're coming up onto the last slide here. So,
Well, real quickly, that plane in the background, that is a refueler plane.
oh, okay.
So it has like a
So-
big boom arm that like does mid-air refueling.
All right, that's the one we always see when the in the movies when the jets are gonna hook up to that. That's the plane that they're hooking up to. Then.
Yes, it should be, yes.
Ah, okay.
All right, and then yeah, this is like like the final photos here, and I wish I had more photos of the big trucks that we used, but this is like the best thing I could find. So we'll start with the top left. The top left, the truck that's on the right, that is a de-icer. So in the wintertime, because of the snow and ice, we had to consistently de-ice the planes overnight before they had to take off, like before the air crew came to take over the plane.
Right.
And I absolutely hated that. I don't know how out of the 4 years was trained on it, I never had to de-ice a plane, so I
Wow.
was really fortunate because I did the training, I trained people on it, but I never actually did it because sometimes the weather was warm enough, or sometimes we would turn it over to because this is normally you would prep it on night shift, and then you would turn it over to day shift, and, I don't know, it just lined up that I never got to do it, which was great. Um so anyways, it's a big truck that de-ices. It's a two-man job. So there's someone driving, there's someone in the cab, which I'm sorry you can't see a good photo of it, and they have like the nozzle to spray like the de-icing liquid
Hmm. Yeah.
and the hot air. Um, and then the truck that you see here, which you can't really see the cab of this truck, which is the left photo and it's the bottom photo and also the right photo. That is called a condor or a high reach platform. And this is an old school skyjack, I guess you can say, like a diesel powered like skyjack, old school technology. And as much as I love driving it, I hated operating it because it was such a like operation just to set it up. So as you can see, there's like four stab jacks or whatever to raise it up because you have to raise it up when you use it.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and then you have to get in the basket, and then yeah, it's just like this whole operation. It's the only reason we had it is because since the base I worked at serviced C5s, if a C5 came in the winter and needed to be de-iced, this condor connects to the de-icer truck and can become a extended de-icer, if that makes sense. and and this condor specifically de-iced just the T-tail of the plane because it's 20 meters tall. So um it was there as a backup because there was actually a de-icing truck that was long enough, like had a long enough boom to do the
Yep.
tail, but it was like always broken. So we had to use two machines just to de-ice the tail of the planes. It was ridiculous. Um, yeah.
Oh man.
So that's how we had to park them. As you can see, the truck was right next to it. There's a special hose that we checked out from the tool crib,
Ah,
and
yes. Yeah.
then uh, someone would sit in the truck to make sure that like the truck was running and stuff was operating correctly, and then someone was operating the boom arm of the Condor. I mean, it was just a huge operation just to de-ice the plane for like 30 minutes or an hour, I think it was. Probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So,
Wow.
um, but like I said, I really like driving the truck because it felt like I was driving a big bus. Um, it's I don't know. I like driving big trucks. It's kind of cool, and so yeah. So that's pretty much it for these slides that I sent you, like all these photos here.
Oh,
And I have some. I sent you those links earlier, so we can, if you want to, if you have time,
yeah,
we
we
can look
can.
at those links as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, we can look over those. It to me, it's funny that the backup truck works better than the main vehicle, which is broken down. I find that quite funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I know we'll probably talk about it later. Remind me when we talk about like safety stuff because we pre-showed it. I want to tell you a situation about that de-icer we called it the extended reach de-icer. I'll tell you
okay,
a funny story about that. It's a very short story, but it's a safety story. So
okay, that's no problem. Yeah, some of these other photos that you sent me here, we'll just
yeah, so this is the visor of the C5, which is the only airplane in the world that has a front that has like this visor that can oh sorry, my bad. It's the C5 is the only plane in the world that can kneel because right now it's in the kneeled position. So you can drive a truck like all the way into it and also out the back if you wanted to. So it's the only plane in the world that can kneel, but it also has this visor that lifts up. Um, a lot of like airline, like 767s or 757s, I don't remember, they have visors as well. Like the nose of it will raise up, but
okay.
you can't drive a vehicle onto it because it's like way up there.
Yeah,
Um,
that's something, all right.
yep. So the plane is knelt. Kneeling the plane is an operation in itself. You have to be specially trained in order to do it. There's a supervisor that supervises the operation, and then there's two guys. There's one on each side. Oh, sorry. There's three guys. There's one on each side watching the. There's like these counters, and it's all part of the maintenance manual. And then there's a guy up top that's actually what do you call it? Manning the controls. So
Wow.
yeah.
No, that's neat. I didn't know that planes could kneel.
Well, only this one can.
Ah,
To my
yes.
knowledge, there's no other plane that can do that. So
Wow.
that's what makes it very valuable.
Okay, what are we looking at here?
So I told you before. So in this environment, um, I worked with a lot of like hazardous material. So for example, we worked with liquid oxygen. We worked with liquid nitrogen. We worked with hydraulic fluids, sealants, and oils and fuel, of course. So this truck is a liquid nitrogen truck. And you might be wondering, well, why do you have to use a liquid nitrogen truck? So the old C5 models um, have liquid nitrogen storage because liquid nitrogen is used as a fire inert or fire suppression or like fire. Yeah, I think it's like fire suppression. So in the case of a fire on the plane, the liquid nitrogen gets converted to gaseous nitrogen and it will like cut out the oxygen or whatever to like suppress the
Oh,
fire.
yes. Okay.
And so it's used for that on the C5 specifically, and it's also used in the wing excuse me, the fuel tanks to like pressurize or inert the fuel tanks or whatever. um, so we it was quite the operation. We always had to go and like take it. So there's a special location on the base that like fills up the liquid nitrogen because you can't do it like excuse me, you can't do it anywhere. You have to go to like a special place.
Okay, makes sense.
So they would fill it up. We would take it back, and then whenever we need to service it, we would go hook it up to the plane and service liquid nitrogen, which is actually a really easy task. And it's not really dangerous because liquid nitrogen is not or it's inert, so it's like not combustible or whatever. If I'm remembering correctly, but like liquid oxygen is. So if you like start some sparks or whatever, then like liquid oxygen will blow up in your face, if I
Yeah,
remember correctly.
it's a good oxidizer, liquid oxygen.
I
Liquid nitrogen is yeah, it's inert. It won't explode, but what it will do is it'll asphyxiate you if you're in a closed space.
Yes. So yeah, so this truck was fun to drive. It's a basic big truck, and the C-17 can generate its own nitrogen. So there's no hookups for the 17 to like load liquid nitrogen.
Oh,
Um, yeah, it's I don't know if any other planes besides the C-5 uses this truck because I've only ever used it on the C-5. So yeah.
hmm. And what did Rupa say? Good for dropping trucks on enemy in midair. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he's
Could
referring
be
to the
good.
previous photo. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was the another one here. That was the one we saw there with the landing gear.
Yes.
This was the what was this again? This was the
This is the
hydraulic power
hydraulic
pack.
test stand.
Oh yes.
So I'm trying to see which photo would be the best one. Can you choose that green one that's in the second row,
Right
five to
here.
the right? Yep, that one. Yeah, I think that's the best one. So this is called a hydraulic test stand, and this is like an external. It's an external device that allows you to move flight controls on the plane. And so when I was in the inspection hangar, we used this like every single day to pressurize the systems and do all kinds of like checks and stuff. And I got trained on how to use it. And then when I moved to Japan, there was a situation where like they needed to do checks on the plane, but they couldn't turn over the engines because they didn't have anybody to do that. And so they're like, "Hey, you have experience using this, don't you?" I was like, "Yeah." "Well, can you like run this for us?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can do it. It's really easy." So I like ran this machine for them,
Nice.
and it was I mean, it was easy because 'cause I'd done it so many times, and they were all, like, blown away by it. I was like, "Well, it's whatever." So, yeah, it has, like, giant hoses that hook up to the plane. Basically, every airplane has this because they gotta be able to, hook up this type of machinery to the plane. Um, and it shoots up, like, 3,000 PSI of hydropressure to the
Yep.
plane.
Yep.
So yeah, it was always interesting operating this. But yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it for this piece of equipment.
No, that's good. I mean, in my trade, which is I'm in the millwright trade, we do learn about a lot of hydraulics and deal with them in depending on where we work at. And it's always good to remember that these things will kill you because 3,000 psi will it can inject into your skin if there's a pinhole in one of the hoses, and then you're going to have to be rushed to the hospital because nothing is worse than a high pressure injection leak into your body. So they'll take you to the hospital and fillet you like a fish and clean all that oil out of your system.
Yes, that those I've seen images because we had to go through safety courses. Images of that have haunted me to this day, of
Yeah,
like people getting shredded by that.
if you're squeamish, don't look up hydraulic injection injury because it's not nice. It's not very nice looking, but
Yeah,
it's just
it's
something to be
really
aware of.
bad.
If you suspect a leak, get yourself a piece of cardboard or a piece of wood and hold it in front of where you think the leak is. And when it hits that, then you'll know for sure.
Mm.
Um, let's see, what was this last? Oh, yeah, what's this about? You
That's a
sent me
wrong
one of these.
image.
The wrong image?
I
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. I think you might have clicked on that image. I sent you the link.
probably.
It is what it is. Yeah, I don't. Oh, my bad. Okay, so can you click out of this image? Can you? Will it
Sure.
let you? Because
Close
I
it.
think the real image is behind it.
Oh,
If you scroll up to the top, no.
well, there's that one we looked at with the nitrogen.
Oh, I am so sorry. Hold on a second.
Oh, that's quite all right.
I wanted to show you the liquid oxygen carts that we use,
Oh,
and I'm going to. Okay, here we go. I'm going to send you the image again.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, no problem.
You're gonna laugh because this is liquid oxygen, so it's like a pretty dangerous device or chemical. But like we're using like a small a vehicle for it, like a small thing for it. So yeah, here it is. Um, yeah, so it's got two hoses. You hook it up to the plane, and liquid oxygen is used as emergency air for the air crew.
Oh, okay.
Um, so like all of the airplanes have like masks and stuff, like
Yep.
emergency air masks, and so you always have to make sure there's liquid oxygen service on the plane, so in case there's an emergency, they have air to use.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
but it's funny because, like they said, this is a small, like little piece of equipment that has liquid oxygen in it, and you just tow it around in a vehicle, like a regular vehicle. So yeah. Um, and I always hated servicing liquid oxygen because the connection point on the plane would freeze over,
Yep.
and it's always a pain trying to like disconnect it. There was like a trick to it where before you relief pressure from the cart, you would like quickly disconnect it and then relieve the pressure, and then it wouldn't freeze over if I remember
Oh, okay.
correctly. So
Yeah, that's what happens whenever you like have any kind of liquid or air that's been compressed down to liquid form. It's always you're always going to get freezing because of the pressure differential. It changes, right? And then yeah, just takes all the heat away, and you start frosting over.
yes, and it looks like people in the chat are ignoring our warning about looking up those photos.
Hey, it's up to them. I told them, I said, if they're squeamish, but if they're not, go ahead. You'll see what happens. It eats all the fat out of you.
Yes. Um, so I think that's about it. I have some other photos that I can send, but whenever we get on the subject of safety, I'll send you those links or whatever.
Well, you know what? We can do that right now. We can get onto the subject of safety. I'm sure there's been uh, some things that you've encountered in your career, and you've been like, "Ooh, that's not very safe."
Yes. So when I was at the inspection hangar, I think within about a year and a half I was there, we had a huge incident. And before I arrived to that duty station, that hangar had a quite the string of incidents that had happened to the airplane and to people. Now, I don't think people got hurt, but when I mean people, like people were like making mistakes and like getting in trouble for like some mistakes and causing damage to the airplane.
Hmm.
And so what happened was we went through like 6 months of just, for lack of better words, hell, because so many incidents had happened where the plane got damaged, and it affected our image, and the base commander and the over him was like, what's going on? So we were put into like serious training for 6 months, and we were working like overtime, which is never like the best thing to do. Like they always talked about how if you work more than 8 hours, your what is it, your mental functions start to kind of like diminish a little bit,
Yep. Yep.
especially
I've
if
heard
you
that.
work past 12 hours.
Yep.
And so I never understood why, when we went through this 6 months of nonsense, that we were working like 12-hour shifts. And especially after we had a huge string of events where people were like accidentally like not spotting stuff and like damaging the plane. So, anyways, so the first year and a half when I was there, I was on a pressure run, which is when we were using the hydraulic test stand. And what happened was, what led up to it was we needed to raise the airplane so that we can do, I think, gear swings. And what we did is we made a first mistake where we accidentally pre-raised the maintenance stands, which you're not really supposed to do. You have to
Okay.
raise the plane first before you raise the maintenance stands. So we ran around and raised the maintenance stands, and then the shift lead was like, "Hey, we need to lower the flaps and slats because we're going to be raising the plane." I don't know what his thinking was, but so we're like, "Okay, let's do that." So when we turned on pressure and we were going to raise the flaps and slats, everyone forgot that the stands were raised. So that means when the flaps and slats were coming down, they were going to be hitting the stands,
Oh no.
and it was crazy because whenever you do pressure runs, there's always like a bunch of people in different positions, like watching stuff to make sure things aren't going to be hitting. And so I was in the landing gear section, inspecting the gears to make sure like the gears weren't going to be moving. And then we didn't have anybody on the wings because the stands were kind of torn down per se, like they weren't set up.
Yeah.
And we had somebody in the troop compartment. And so as soon as like we're like, okay, we're lowering the flaps and slats, and you hear it just like moving, and the next thing you know, you hear like this loud crash. It was like boom, and we're just like, what was that? And then the guy in the troop compartment, he pokes his head out the side door, and he's like, hey, we just lowered the flaps into the stands. And then at that point, it was like, oh boy, here we go.
Oh
And
no.
it was like not chaos, but it was just like, all right, so we quickly raised the flaps, we safed the system, we shut down pressure, and then the what do you call him, the dock chief came out and was like, what was that sound, what's going on? And then the guy that was in charge of the pressure run was like, yeah, we just did this. And they're like, all right, everyone goes into this room right now. So we went inside this conference room, and we were pretty much held hostage there for like several hours until the inspection team came, like the wing inspection team.
Yep.
And then that's when like all of us were like read our rights, and then we were told to like write down a detailed description of what had happened, and then like individually. And then they talked to us, they interviewed us, and then we were there for like several hours, and then finally they let us go home. And so, yeah, that was like a pretty scary experience for me because I was only there for like a year and a half, and I was like, why am I involved in this? Like I literally did nothing wrong. I was in the gears. Like I completely forgot we raised the stands, and I completely like didn't realize that we were going to lower the flaps and slats. So, now you're probably wondering like, well, how did something like this happen? So the guy that was in charge, he was going through a rough time. And I think what had happened is he was just too distracted because leadership was breathing down his neck. He had a rough, like, outside life. And so he was just there to get the job done. And because of that, all the distractions, it led him to like making this mistake. And unfortunately, it kind of cost him his career.
Oh,
Something like this did cost him his career. And I don't know like where he's at these days, but it did cost him his career. So yeah.
that's unfortunate. But yeah, it's the distractions that at work, the distractions that aren't at work that get you, like with your home life or whatever it may be, and your mind's not on task, and that's when mistakes are made. And it's unfortunate stuff like that happens. You know.
JD, OSI. How do you know about OSI? uh, so let's see. Prior to me coming there, there was another incident where someone didn't move this small stand out of the way. And when they lowered the flaps and slats, like I said, the flaps are behind the wing and the slats are in front of the wing.
Yeah.
When they lowered the flaps and slats, the slat punctured itself into the stand, like made a big puncture. And so that was like one of the main events that caused like problems with that work environment. And there was like a whole string of other events that I don't remember exactly. So um, after they changed up leadership and after they like fixed the culture, I guess you can say, the environment, things got better and we didn't have any incidents again. Um, but yeah, so that was like a direct safety situation with me. An indirect safety situation, and it wasn't like a bad situation, was I was telling you about that extended range de-icer, and this is actually a kind of a funny situation. So a previous shift, they were doing training on it, and like I said, it's a two-man job. So someone drives the actual vehicle, and
Yeah.
someone sits in the basket. So the guy in the basket is being like trained on like using it. So he's like taking it up and moving it all around, and as he's moving it around, it like stops working.
Oh
And like
no.
he can't like retract the arm and he can't lower it. So here he is like suspended like I don't know 40 or 50 feet up and like just can't move. And so they had to call the fire department to come and like rescue him from the cab.
Oh
So
man.
I thought that was pretty funny when I heard about it.
Yeah. Nice. That's Oh man, he'd probably beat red, eh? Just embarrassed.
He was a pretty chill guy, so I think he just was like, "Oh, that was interesting," and
Yeah.
that was that. So,
Uh,
um, but I guess when for other safety stuff, I sent you a link, and this is actually a very famous story.
oh,
Um,
this one here. Let's
I
see.
just sent you this link, so if you want to show the
That one there.
photo, yes. So this is a very famous story of a C-5 crashing, and this was all entirely on the pilots. And they like they made a lot of miscalculations, and they ended up like undershooting the runway and just destroying the plane when they landed.
Oh man.
um yeah, and I if I remember correctly, no one died, but like people were definitely injured, like severely injured from this. So
Whew.
yeah, so anyways, this is like a random like crash that happened like many years ago, I think like 20 plus years ago now. um But whenever we went through these safety programs, we called it risk management.
Yep.
Um, they would always show us these photos. They would always show us or they always inform us of the hydro photos that we talked about earlier.
Yep.
And when I was actually in the specific fundamental training, like way back when I first started, they showed us photos of people getting destroyed by like the plane when it comes to like example, over servicing the tire. So like there was a situation where this girl over serviced a fighter jet's tire. She used a high pressure hose instead of a low pressure.
Oh
So
no.
instead of putting in like I think it was like 100 psi or whatever of low pressure, she put like 1,000 psi. And she was standing in the wrong spot too. If she was not standing in that spot, she probably would have walked away fine. But she was standing right in front of the tire, like where the hub is, right?
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
that thing exploded, it pretty much folded her
Oh.
and like just killed her because it folded her. So they showed us an image of that, and that haunted me when I saw that.
Oy.
Um, of course, there was the image of like the hands or bodies getting mutilated by the hydro.
Yep.
Um, There's another incident. This is actually related to a C-17 that happened in Charleston, and it was what happened was they were doing an ops check on a spoiler. A spoiler is what allows the plane to slow down, whether in flight or on the ground. It's just like a big piece of metal that comes swinging up.
Yep.
And what happened was is they didn't safe the system correctly, and they had somebody under what in how do you say, like inside the spoiler, pretty much where it would like lay flush on the plane.
Yep.
And when they turned pressure on and did some stuff, there was a guy inside that area, and he pretty much got crushed by the spoiler because the spoiler came down on him.
Ah.
And they actually had audio recording of that because they took the audio from the plane.
Yeah.
And so every time I went through that class, they would always show they would always play that audio recording. And it was just, like, creepy listening to it every single time.
Oh, I
So,
bet. I mean, geez.
but yeah,
Oof.
so one thing I will say, I did appreciate, like, how adamant they were about safety because there was a lot of, like, ridiculous incidents. There was another funny story, I should say. Um, there's a maintenance stand that is, like, gas powered, and, we were moving into position, or this guy moved into position. There was a civilian guy, and there was a military guy, a GI on top of it. And what he did is he on the rails, you can like pull out the rails, right?
Yep. Extend the
To do whatever
platform?
you need with it. To either extend it or just to remove it so you can get to the like whatever you're working on a little bit easier.
Okay.
So this is funny. The guy that did this was an idiot because like he just wasn't paying attention. So he pulled the pins out for this rail and didn't think about that the rail was gonna fall down because he pulled the pins. And the civilian was on the ground, and this was in the inspection hangar, by the way, so everyone's wearing, hard hats or hard helmets.
Yep.
And the civilian on the ground got hit by the rail by on his head, like, on the hard
Oh,
helmet, and it was I didn't see the incident, but I was told this. I guess, like, when he got hit, somehow he knew he was gonna pass out, so he, like, made a dive for the floor, and, like,
okay.
everyone thought he was, like, goofing around because he was kind of like a goofy civilian. But then, like, when he didn't, like, wake up, like, he was, like, knocked out cold, they're like, "Oh, crud, he actually got knocked out." So, that was, like, an interesting incident that I remember hearing, somebody not paying attention and pulling pins out and something falling on somebody.
Oh,
So
just a brain fart at that moment, eh? Like just, oh yeah, I'll just pull these pins out and woof, just the thing's taking off and cracking people in the head. That's not
yeah.
good.
So, as far as my, newer job or when I went to my new job, the one in Japan, I don't think there was any safety incidents if I recall other than that, the de-icer one. So
That's good. You don't wanna go to places where they have a lot of incidents, really.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, and,
But yeah, that
just, uh just to say hello to you, Flaccid Phoenix. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you're
hail.
enjoying the stream.
Old crud is old crud is his favorite line. Alright, dude. Sounds kinda weird. Don't be simping for me.
Yeah. S just, subscribe to, Angry Canadian's, Patreon, where you can get all the old crud you want.
Yes. Um, but, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I don't have any other things off the top of my head I can share. So if you got any questions you wanna ask to trigger my memory, but, um, yeah.
So you finally got out. Now, um, is there an equivalent for what you did in the military that would be considered in civilian life there? What they would do for a trade, as it were?
Yeah, so the equivalent would be the A&P license, also known as the Airframe and Power Plant license. Basically, if you want to work for a civilian company that does aircraft maintenance, I don't think they're going to hire you unless they hire you and train you to get that A&P license. However, if you get hired with the A&P license, you will start out with a lot more money than like the other guys because they already know you have the experience, especially if you come from like the military background and you had that career field.
Yep.
But yes, the A&P license is like the equivalent of what I did in the military, or the
Okay.
qualifications that I had in the military, I should say.
Okay. So then you could go work for one of the airlines, as it were, whoever, when they do their work on their aircraft.
Yeah, so for example, I have friends around the world that work for civilian commercial airlines and they have A&P. And yeah, so Godzillionaire is right. You're not touching a commercial plane without A&P. Yeah. So they have their A&P and they work for commercial airlines around the world. So you can do that, and this is like American companies. So you can work around the world with this license as long as you find a way to get to that country or you get hired by them. So I have friends in like Japan that are doing that, friends in like Germany, um, and they get paid way better than the GIs got paid. So the military guys, I should say.
Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. You're saying people in the trades get paid better? Really?
Yeah, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Who's been saying that for the past 23 episodes of Trades Talk, I wonder? We gotta start
Yes.
getting the people interested into the trades, the young people, you know, gotta get them in high school and just let them know, "Hey, you can work on aircraft, which is pretty cool. You can get paid well. You know, you just need to go through the schooling to do it." And right here, I'm reading this. It says for A and P, you got to be 18, be able to read, write, and understand English, and possess a high school diploma or a GED. I mean, there you go. It doesn't get much simpler than that, folks. It is it's a good start.
Yeah, and when I was in the military, they always pushed onto us education. They're like, you should get your education, you should get your degrees and stuff. And a lot of the bases that I know of have a like aeronautical schools that are there, like that they have programs specifically for like aircraft maintenance. So people would like they would have their job experience and then they would go get like a better piece of paper from that school so that they can get the better job once they get out of the military. Because sometimes like the military job experience, it gives you a good amount, it gives you a good foundation, but they still kind of need more. And that's where this AMP license is like very important for that.
Yeah, and Godzillionaire points it out as well. Most of the commercial airline AMTs are union, so you get paid very well thanks to the union. Yeah. And Jake D is the moral of the story: go to college and major in theater studies.
All right, all right.
Uh, oh, Alex Moore's a little bit behind due to his connection, but that's all right. He'll catch up. And his reincarnation will still be a plumber, though. Everybody needs plumbers. You'd be surprised when things
Yes.
don't work in the bathroom. Man, you're on the phone real quick to that plumber.
Yeah, so this career field is like never really going to go away. There's always going to be planes flying and people to fix them. Um, now, when it comes to the different environments, like job environments, I've always been told, and I have first or second accounts on it, that the civilian world is not as stressful as the military world. But on the flip side, the civilian world is not as strict as the military world when it comes to how they practice their aircraft maintenance.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. I think they need to have a good blend of it. The civilian side has to be a little more strict, you know, and military side has to, maybe relax a little bit. But there's
Yes.
got to be that good middle ground.
Yes, the one thing that killed it for me in the U.S. Air Force when it came to the aircraft maintenance was quality assurance, which was a specific job and section within the maintenance like squadron. And their job, okay, I understand their job is to go out there and to be quality assurance. Like, hey, like we're here to check make sure you're doing the job right. We're gonna follow behind you, or we're gonna follow with you on the job. So in the civilian world, that job is pretty different to my knowledge. They don't go and hound you in the civilian world. They kind of check on you every once in a while, and they're not there to like they're not like cops like trying to get tickets, if that makes sense. Whereas
Yeah.
like the military side, they're kind of like cops trying to collect tickets. Like they got a quota they got to meet. And what doesn't help is when you have like squadron commanders like breathing down their necks, like, hey, how come you guys aren't catching enough like fails, like QA fails? Like you guys should be catching more because like clearly people are doing stuff wrong out there when like that's just not the case. Like sure I've worked with some bad egg people, but generally speaking, everyone I've worked with has always used the manuals, has always used the proper techniques, the proper training, and I've never seen people be shady about stuff and like, "Hey, we're going to deliberately go against this because I think it's a better choice." I've never seen that. I've always seen people say, "We're going to do it this way." Even though the TO says this, but the TO or excuse me, the manual allows us to go this way, we're going to do it this way, but it's never done in like some malicious type way that these QA guys kind of think we are doing it in. So like I said, QA, just those type of people kind of killed my drive to stay in this career field, because they're hawks. They're just or actually it's funny, they're vultures because their logos are always like vultures and they're always around trying to like bother us while we're trying to do our jobs. So
Yeah.
uh yeah.
I don't agree with that. The You shouldn't be like, oh, you have to find something wrong. It's like, look, just look over their work. Like you're getting to the point where you're trying to catch somebody doing something wrong when they're not doing it wrong. Like, stop that. I don't agree with that. And no wonder you didn't want to stick around, because who wants to be under the gun all the time from those guys? You know, it's ridiculous. I can't stand inspectors like that.
What makes it even funnier is that all of the QA guys were prior like maintenance guys like me. So what would happen is they would select people like, hey, we have this position open up in QA and we want you to fill it. So that guy would get pulled from the maintenance environment and go sit at QA for like 2 years and do QA's job. And then he would have to come back to the maintenance environment. So if he was a total like jerk to everybody while he was a QA, like he was not going to be reintegrated very nicely with everybody because everyone's going to remember him as the guy that hounded everybody when it came to like inspections and stuff. So I had good friends that were like really fair with their inspections or their evaluations. And like they wouldn't, if you made a mistake, they wouldn't just be like upset at you or like diminish you, or cuz like we're all adults and we all know what we're doing, but like if we make a mistake because we're nervous cuz someone's watching us, like that's only a natural thing in my opinion. So
Oh yeah,
uh,
for sure.
a good inspector knows that, and he's not gonna like dock you points for that. So it's only like if you're gonna do something really dangerous that they should step in and stop you from doing it, which I agree with.
Yeah,
So
there's the difference between, "Oh, I'm gonna write you up for this," or just, tapping you on the shoulder and going, "Oh, just so in case you didn't realize you missed that, bolt, or you missed doing that, just make sure you fix that up," rather than writing you up and making a big production about it.
yes. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the QA side of stuff. I just don't have any respect for those people anymore.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
But yeah, the
But
civilian
now
side. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
no,
pops.
no, go ahead. Civilian side, go ahead.
I was say civilian side. Like I said, my friends are in it. They seem to really enjoy it. They have good camaraderie. They get the job done. Sometimes there's some annoyances, but it's not as like strict as the military. And at the end of the day, they get paid pretty well for what they're doing, especially because they have that AMP license. So
There you go. So if anybody was thinking about getting into, aerospace mechanic, aviation mechanic, whatever they're gonna call it, um, it's very simple, it looks like, of what you have to do. Just spread the word to the younger people around. It's like, hey, you want to work on airplanes? This is what you got to do.
and if I might add, so if someone wants to do this and like let's say they want like an ideal path, I would, if you're okay toughing it out in the military, if you're okay doing that, I would at least do 4 years so that you can get the money to get so they can pay for your education so you can get that AMP license. And then once the 4 years your contract's done with the military, like find yourself that civilian job and then jump into the civilian job with your AMP and your workplace experience, and you'll already be a step ahead of a lot of people that are trying to like jump into it without that military experience, and just straight out of college. So that would be
That's
my recommendation. One of
Yep,
them.
that's good advice. There's something that we have here in Canada. It's called the RAP program, and what it is uh, high. You can start your apprenticeship when you're in high school, and once you get out, and a couple of years, and then you're a journeyman by the time you're 20 years old. Well, you may be a journeyman, but you have no real experience, so nobody's going to take you seriously. But being in the military, that's a viable way because you're going to get the on the job experience and be able to use it when you get back into civilian life. So
Yes. I let's see, like I said, I was 17 when I enlisted. I turned 18 actually when I was in boot camp. So by the time I was a journeyman, I was 20, but I had a lot of knowledge and I finally like earned the respect of my peers because I was a journeyman. And so that was great being able to work on my own. Because I actually forgot to mention it. When you're a craft, or sorry, not craftsman, when you're an apprentice, you can't work by yourself. You have to work with a journeyman.
yep,
And like those first couple years as a apprentice were rough because I wanted to do stuff on my own, but I couldn't. But once I was a journeyman, it was awesome. I can do stuff on my own. I can like zone out everyone around me and focus on the job and get it done and then go home at the end of the day. So that was great.
that's a
It
good
just
feeling
takes a
being a
couple
journeyman.
years. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, it's a good feeling being a journeyman when you're like, hey, I've paid my dues. I'm the guy that people look to for answers now. So you got to be ready for that too. When you're a journeyman, all of a sudden people look at you and go, why don't you know stuff? you know, uh, so it's stuff like that. And then as you get further along, then you start being in charge of people. Now you've really got a lot of responsibility on your hands.
Yeah, being a craftsman was fun too, even though it was pretty like daunting at times. But yeah, leading teams of people, like I led team when this I was a craftsman at my second job, so I led teams on the recoveries of the plane or on the launches. I led teams on the tows. I led the teams when it came to tire changes or big jobs, to a lot of stuff, even jacking the airplane as well, and like full fuselage jacking the airplane. So, I mean, you got a lot of responsibility, but like you you look back and you're like, wow, I actually made it to this position. Like it's a good feeling because you've had a long roads and you finally got to like a nice position, I guess you could say. So
Yeah. No, that's the way. I mean, that's the message I'm trying to get across to people that tune into the stream is it's the trades aren't something to be looked down upon. You learn a skill and it's in many different occupations, many different branches you can go into, you can specialize and you earn you earn good money and it can never be taken away from you because it's knowledge in your brain and experience that you carry with you the rest of your life. So if we can spread the word of that to the younger generations, uh, it'll be a better place because there's going to be a shortage, or there is a shortage right now. Places are getting desperate for tradesmen.
yes, and I know at least in the military, the aircraft maintenance world is always undermanned, like always, always undermanned.
Really?
I don't know about the civilian world, but yes, definitely in the U.S. Air Force, the aircraft maintenance is always undermanned, which is unfortunate because like you get people like me that kind of get thrown into it. I mean, it was a necessary thing because it brought me to Japan. But yeah, that is it's always undermanned.
Huh. Yeah, that's something too because then you're going to work lots of hours if there's not enough manpower. And in the civilian world, that equates to like lots of overtime. So you're either earning time and a half or double time for what you're doing when you're putting the hours in.
Yeah, overtime. What's that? I've never heard of that term before. But yeah, in all seriousness, I when I worked with a lot of these retired civilians, they told me back in the day they had more manning, so they didn't work as many hours. Like they worked 8 to 9 to 10 hours.
Okay.
But since manning was cut quite a bit over the last maybe 10 to 20 years, um, they yeah they have to do more with less. That's the whole mentality is more with less, which is not really good. So
No. Look down on all the social sciences PhDs when they're still drowning in debt in 30 years and you have a fat sack of cash. That's what Jake D says.
yes,
Which I don't know about you. Well, okay, yeah, going through the military that was helpful. When I went through trade school, it was very inexpensive. I paid like $110 a month to go through trade school, and books were extra, but still,
wow.
that was the tuition I would pay. And it's not like it was in the '90s, and it was affordable, and you got an education out of it. So this drowning in student debt, this is ridiculous. Why do you want to drown in student debt for maybe a chance at getting into your field? That's why the trades are a lot better. We have a shortage of people, and getting the education won't break you.
Yes, that is yeah, that's amazing. That was $110, and then you come out with like something very useful, and it pays for itself. Because I don't see like these PhDs paying for themselves if they're still in debt and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but for me, like the military pays for everything. So like, yeah, it literally cost me nothing except years of my life. So the eight
Yep.
years of my youth.
Yeah. And now, are you're out in civilian life now? Are you working in that field at all?
No, I decided that it was fun while it was lasted, but the airplane world is just not for me anymore. I'm done with it. So I want to jump into a different. I want to go back to my original career field, which is IT. But I really want to do more of the hands-on stuff, like the physical of like building servers or the network engineering, that type of stuff. Because I really like it, And so, no, I'm not doing that right now, and I don't plan on doing it. And I don't plan on getting an AMP because I need an AMP if I want to get back into it. So,
Okay. Well, yeah, if you can get into IT, that shouldn't be too bad for you. You don't have to worry about you know tires blowing up on you and stuff like that, and it's a little safer. Maybe the occasional
yes,
shock, but that's about it.
yes. And like right now, I'm just in Japanese language school because I live in Japan, so I need to learn the language in order to survive out here. So once that's done, I'm going to be trying to get into a job. But I've always liked trade jobs. Like I could see myself doing other trade jobs for a little bit because it's different, it's fun, and it doesn't seem it's not as expensive as some of these these other jobs out there to get into, I should say.
For sure. And Jake D is he's into the IT as well. I know he's doing some exams right now for his the IT work he wants to get into.
That's good, dude. Um, yeah, those IT certs are important. I've heard both ways that bachelor is sometimes good to have, but I don't know. It just depends on the company and who's going to hire you.
That's what they're looking for, what they're asking for.
Yes.
Well, that's good. And you're part-time YouTuber as well, as everyone should know or must know. They should watch you anyway, I think. Very entertaining.
Well, I appreciate that. YouTubing is just a hobby for me, my friend, and as soon as it becomes more than that, then and especially if I have a job, then like I'm gonna have to dial it down because I only wanted to do it as a hobby. I mean, I play video games and I like talking to people, so that's all I want to do with YouTube. I don't really want to make a career out of it or anything. But it's been fun meeting people and talking with people like you and other like Napoleon Lifeform and Wakizashi and stuff like and people like them. So
Yeah, no, I think that's what it is for me too. It's a hobby, you come on here, you throw up some material that you hope people like, some content, you know, um, whether it's video games. You and I both do video games. I do the anime chats and also do today, the trades talk, because I don't think I've seen anybody that does a regular trades talk channel. So I guess I've picked a niche, and it's something you have to be knowledgeable about, which I think I am, and passionate about, which I am very much so. So if I can bring this to YouTube, I hope everyone enjoys it as well. And I want to try to get more tradesmen out there to come on, and I want to listen to their stories.
yeah, dude, I think this is very cool what you do, and I hope to see more people, and I hope to see it grow. Um, I will say one thing that I was really surprised when before I left the military, they have you go through a program to prepare you for civilian life. And in that program, they really harped on trade jobs. And I was actually really surprised to see that because all my career, they just told me, like, get your education, go to college, blah, blah, blah. But when I was going through this program at the end, they're like, hey, trade jobs are paying really well right now. Especially, this was like a couple years ago now. So they're saying like, welding's paying really good right now
Oh
and all
yeah,
these other jobs. So like it was kinda cool to see that, and they were saying, "Go to vocational school." Vocational school is cheap, and you get an amazing, certification out of it, and you get a really good paying job after that, so it was kinda nice to see that, refreshing, I should say.
yeah. Like we were saying before, it's everybody's looks down on them, and oh, you're a tradesman. Oh, okay. And it's like you don't even know. You have no idea. Like, tradesmen earning six figures and all that. Uh, it's just like, yeah, it's the misunderstanding people have is just ridiculous out there. Oh, and
Yes.
see you later, Nerdporal. Good to see you. Thanks for coming to the stream.
Let's see, Flaccid is trying to it's trying to
What's he
stir
trying to
us
do?
up.
Trying to
He's
start
he's
you? Start up with you?
he's trying to break my, composure. He's, like, AC list names of people he met that he likes. I forgot the guy in the chat, trying to keep him safe.
What? Safe from the nuke?
Yeah, yeah. Alright, dude. No, Flash is cool. He if he's willing to talk to you about his job or whatever. Um, he'd probably be a good guy to talk to. But
Oh,
um,
yes.
yeah,
What's it
I don't have anything else. Actually, I
no,
can't think of anything else
what's
right
it
now.
saying here? Tradesmen? You guys aren't talking about trading cards? Only Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, only Yu-Gi-Oh.
Vocational Alex? Right before 9 oh, Vacational baby, that was you right before 9/11. Okay.
Mm.
And then they must have shipped you out on some tours, I guess. But yeah, okay. Um, yeah, I think we'll start wrapping things up here. I just want to thank you, Angry Canadian, for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a blast.
Oh yeah, it was great. I'm glad to hear about your time during the trades and what you had to go through. It was very enlightening, and especially because I've never dealt with the aerospace or anything to do with planes, so that is a whole new area for me to learn about. That's excellent. And
Yes, and if I ever find more photos or if I get more information from my other comrades in the civilian world, we can do another episode and I can share more for people to like reinvigorate them to try to look into it again if they are interested. Especially when you get these numbers up, you get more people watching.
oh yeah, yeah. Hopefully they'll show up and throw in their 2 cents in the chat because I always like watching what chat's doing, and sometimes they go off on a tangent, but it's okay. They usually stick with they ask good questions and stick with the topic. They're pretty good. Um, so yeah, I would just like to thank everyone that came by. People like Jake D, Whoopa Troopa, and Alex Moore, and Flaccid Phoenix. Nice having you in the chat, and the Nerdporial Lifeform. And anyone that was lurking, I appreciate you as well. I want to thank you. Make sure you guys slap that like button on your way out and tell your friends, spread the word. You know, there's this guy on every Tuesday. He talks about the trades. So you can tune in and listen and learn and share some of your stories as well. Hopefully, I'll have more special guests on. And I am planning to. Just got to reach out to a few people. Um, don't forget to subscribe to some of those other channels out there, like Pacific 4 and 4 and Blaine's Escape Corner, Ronin 66 and DJ Ronnie G. There's Brandon the Anime Guy. There's the Nerdporial Lifeform. There's my guest today, Angry Canadien. He plays his video games right now. He's doing Paper Mario. And Whoopa Troopa, he appears on Dadman Walking, and they talk sports ball. And then there's Punkwaddle from Floral from Under a Rock. I got a Discord. It's called The Shop. It's where because that's where tradesmen hang out. We hang out at the shop, shoot the breeze. I'm out there on Twitter, and I got a couple of videos on Odyssey and Rumble. And did you have anything coming up, Angry Canadian? Anything you're working on that you'd like to plug?
Yes, let me make sure I get the time right here because living in a different time zone is really it's difficult to remember stuff. So I have a live stream later this week with Cash Money 007. It will be on the 30th of this week at crud. Let's see, what time is it right now for you?
Right now it is 9:30 p.m.
Okay, so it will be at 8 p.m. I believe your time. So 7 p.m. Pacific, because he's in Pacific time. That's right.
Okay. Okay.
And we are going to be talking about it's our episode 2 of the world of video game music, and we're going to be focusing on Fire Emblem. It's going to be the first 2 Fire Emblem games, which never officially came to the U.S. except for the first one. And it's just like a holdover episode because the next month I'm going to be doing Super Mario Brothers with the Nerporial Lifeform and maybe another guest or two. So that's what's happening
Nice.
this week on the 30th.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I've never heard much Fire Emblem music, so I'm interested to hear what they've got going on.
You'll be in for a treat. It's really cool, and I was gonna say, oh, I'm not streaming any more Paper Mario this week. I'm gonna have to pick it up like next week. So I'm sorry for those who are waiting for the final chapter.
Oh, I was looking forward to that. I wanted to see you finish it off.
It'll be coming. Don't worry, it's coming.
Okay. Well, that's good. Good, good. So there you go, folks. That's what Angry Canadians got planned. Hopefully, you guys can tune in and support him and watch how he's doing. Um, as for me, coming up Saturday is video game day for me, playing more Minish Cap. That's at 9 a.m. Saturday morning. That's Mountain Time. Sunday, as always, is Sunday Anime Chat. I haven't figured out a theme for April yet. There's some ideas I have in my head, but haven't figured out yet what I'm going to do. So it's a mystery to you and mystery to me as well. So, and then circling around again to Tuesday, next Tuesday, Trades Talk, having another guest on. It will be a friend of mine named CCD, and she is a female millwright. So we will have a girl on the stream that works in the trades. So that should be interesting, and I hope you all tune into that. Other than that, I'd just like to say thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. And I've been Pop Culture Mechanic with my guest, Angry Canadian, and I am signing off.